What would you do if you watched your daughter's dreams shatter right in front of you, at what should have been the happiest night of her life? For Margaret Chen, a successful architect and devoted mother, her daughter Emma's engagement party was supposed to be a celebration of love and new beginnings. Emma had found Derek Sullivan, handsome, charming, from one of the wealthiest families in the city. Everyone said they were the perfect couple. But when Derek stood up to make his toast that night, his words didn't celebrate Emma. They crushed her. And Margaret, who had always been the calm, composed mother who never made scenes, found herself facing an impossible choice: stay silent and protect the peace, or speak up and risk everything. But here's what Derek didn't know. Margaret Chen wasn't just any mother. She carried secrets of her own, a past she'd buried for 25 years. And the moment Derek humiliated her daughter, he awakened something in Margaret she thought she'd left behind forever. Stay with me, because this story will take you from a glittering engagement party to the dark corners of family secrets, from devastating betrayal to the kind of justice that will make you stand up and cheer. This is about a mother's love, a daughter's strength, and the moment when silence is no longer an option. The garden looked like something out of a fairy tale. Margaret stood at the edge of the stone patio, watching white string lights twinkle overhead like captured stars. Lanterns hung from the old oak trees, casting warm golden pools across the perfectly manicured lawn. Tables dressed in cream linen dotted the space, each one topped with arrangements of peonies and roses, Emma's favorite flowers. The scent drifted on the evening breeze, sweet and hopeful. Margaret smoothed down the front of her navy dress, the silk cool beneath her fingertips. She'd chosen it carefully, elegant but not attention-grabbing. Tonight wasn't about her. Tonight was Emma's night. Her daughter's engagement party. The beginning of Emma's happily ever after. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. Margaret's eyes found Emma across the garden, and her chest tightened with that fierce, protective love only a mother knows. Emma wore a pale pink dress that made her look luminous, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. She was laughing at something Derek's mother had said, her hand resting lightly on Derek's arm. Even from this distance, Margaret could see the happiness radiating from her daughter's face. 25 years. That's how long Margaret had been Emma's mother. 25 years of scraped knees and science projects, of teenage heartbreaks and college applications. 25 years of watching this beautiful, brilliant, kind-hearted girl grow into a woman. And now, that woman is getting married. Margaret should have felt nothing but joy. So why did that small, persistent knot of worry sit in her stomach like a stone? She shook her head slightly, as if she could physically dislodge the feeling. She was being ridiculous. Overprotective. Derek was a good man. Everyone said so. He came from the Sullivan family, old money, excellent reputation. He had a successful career in finance. He was handsome, well-educated, and charming. He treated Emma well. He made her laugh. What more could a mother want for her daughter? And yet, Margaret couldn't quite put her finger on what bothered her. It was nothing concrete. Just small moments over the past 6 months. The way Derek sometimes cut Emma off mid-sentence when she was telling a story. How he'd correct her in front of others, always with a laugh, always framed as teasing. The time Margaret had called Emma, and her daughter had been crying, though she'd insisted it was nothing, just wedding stress, everything was fine. Everything was fine. Margaret repeated the words to herself like a mantra. She was projecting. That's what her therapist would say. She was letting her own past, her own mistakes, color how she saw Emma's relationship. It wasn't fair to Derek. It wasn't fair to Emma. A hand touched her elbow, and Margaret turned to find her sister Linda beside her, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Linda pressed one into Margaret's hand with a knowing smile. "Stop worrying," Linda said, her voice gentle but firm. "I can see it all over your face." Margaret accepted the glass, taking a small sip. The bubbles fizzed on her tongue. "I'm not worrying. Maggie." Linda raised one perfectly shaped eyebrow. "I've known you for 48 years. I know when you're worrying. And I know that look. It's the same look you had when Emma was 6 and insisted on climbing that tree at the park. Despite herself, Margaret smiled at the memory. Emma had made it halfway up before Margaret's heart had nearly stopped. But Emma had kept climbing, fearless and determined, until she'd reached the top. She'd been so proud of herself. She fell out of that tree, Margaret reminded her sister. And she got right back up and climbed it again the next day, Linda countered. Emma's always been strong. She's always been able to handle herself. You raised her that way. Margaret nodded slowly, wanting to believe it. She had raised Emma to be strong. To be independent. To know her own worth. Emma wasn't a little girl anymore. She was 25 years old, smart, capable, with a master's degree in marketing and a promising career. She could make her own choices. She could choose her own partner. Derek's a good man, Linda continued, as if reading Margaret's thoughts. The Sullivans are a good family. Emma's happy. Look at her. Margaret looked. Emma was glowing. Absolutely glowing. Her face lit up whenever Derek looked at her. She wore her engagement ring, a massive princess-cut diamond that probably cost more than Margaret's car, with obvious pride. She'd been planning this party for weeks, agonizing over every detail. The flowers. The menu. The guest list. She'd wanted everything to be perfect. And it was perfect. The evening was warm but not too hot. The food was delicious. The guests were having a wonderful time. Music played softly in the background, jazz standards that gave the whole event a classic, timeless feel. Emma had thought of everything. You're right, Margaret said finally, taking another sip of champagne. I'm being silly. But even as she said it, that knot in her stomach tightened. The party had been going for nearly 2 hours. Margaret had made the rounds, chatting with guests, accepting congratulations, playing the role of proud mother of the bride-to-be. She'd talked to Derek's parents, Richard and Patricia Sullivan, who were exactly the kind of people Margaret had expected, polished, formal, with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. She'd spoken with Emma's college friends, who gushed about how lucky Emma was, how Derek was such a catch. She'd even endured a conversation with Derek's Aunt Constance, who'd spent 15 minutes detailing her opinions on proper wedding etiquette. Now, Margaret found herself at one of the cocktail tables near the edge of the garden, half listening to her cousin Robert tell a long story about his recent golf game. Her attention kept drifting to Emma and Derek, who stood near the center of the patio, surrounded by a group of Derek's friends from college. Margaret's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. What had they said? What was so funny? Before she could think better of it, Margaret excused herself from Robert's golf story and moved closer to Emma's group. She kept her expression pleasant, casual, just a mother checking on her daughter. As she approached, she caught the tail end of the conversation. Just saying, marriage changes things, one of Derek's friends was saying. He had a smug grin on his face. Better enjoy your freedom while you can, man. Freedom's overrated, Derek said with a laugh. Besides, I've got Emma well trained already. The group laughed again. Emma's laugh sounded hollow to Margaret's ears. Well trained? Another friend asked, raising his eyebrows with exaggerated interest. Do tell. Derek pulled Emma closer, and Margaret saw her daughter stiffen slightly before relaxing into him. Let's just say Emma knows how to keep me happy. Don't you, babe? Emma's smile looked painted on. I will try my best. That's my girl, Derek said, and kissed the top of her head in a gesture that might have looked affectionate but somehow felt patronizing to Margaret. She's going to make the perfect wife. She's already promised to have dinner on the table every night when I get home from work. Margaret blinked. Emma? Her Emma, who often survived on coffee and takeout during busy weeks at her job. Her Emma, who'd once told Margaret that the whole domestic goddess thing wasn't her style. That's ambitious, one of the friends said. Patricia makes you cook half the time, doesn't she? Emma opened her mouth as if to respond, but Derek spoke first. Yeah, well, Emma's not like my mom. She knows how to make a man feel like a man, you know what I mean? More laughter. Margaret's jaw clenched. She was about to step forward, to insert herself into the conversation, when Linda appeared at her side again, one hand firmly gripping Margaret's elbow. "Don't," Linda whispered urgently. "Not yet. It's just boy talk. Don't embarrass Emma." Margaret took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay still. Linda was right. Making a scene wouldn't help anything. Emma was an adult. If she had a problem with the way Derek and his friends were talking, she could speak up herself. But as Margaret watched, Emma just kept smiling that hollow smile, laughing at jokes that didn't seem funny, nodding along as Derek painted a picture of their future life that didn't sound anything like the life Emma had told Margaret she wanted. The knot in Margaret's stomach twisted tighter. The evening continued. Dinner was served, an elegant three-course meal that Emma had planned with the caterer. Margaret found herself seated at a table with Linda, Robert, and a few of Emma's colleagues from the marketing firm where she worked. The conversation flowed easily, talk of campaigns and projects and office politics that Margaret only half understood. But she couldn't fully focus. Her attention kept drifting to the head table, where Emma and Derek sat with Derek's parents. Even from her seat across the garden, Margaret could see the tension in Emma's posture. She watched as Derek leaned over to whisper something to his mother, both of them glancing at Emma before sharing a private smile. What were they saying? Why did it feel like they were talking about Emma, not to her? Margaret forced herself to take another bite of the perfectly prepared salmon on her plate. It tasted like cardboard. "The food is amazing," one of Emma's colleagues was saying. Emma really outdid herself with this party. "She did," Margaret agreed, glad her voice came out steady. "She worked so hard on it." "Derek's lucky to have her," another colleague added. "She's the best in our department. Clients love her. Last month, she single-handedly saved the Waverley account when everything was falling apart." Pride bloomed in Margaret's chest. Yes. That was her Emma. Brilliant, capable, talented Emma. "Though I guess she won't be working much longer," the first colleague said, a note of regret in her voice. "Derek mentioned she's planning to cut back after the wedding." Margaret's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Cut back?" "Yeah, he was telling us earlier. He said something about Emma maybe going part-time, or taking a break altogether. He said they want to start a family right away, and Emma should be home for that." The words hit Margaret like a physical blow. Emma loved her job. She'd worked her ass off to get where she was. She'd never mentioned wanting to cut back, let alone quit. They'd just talked last week, and Emma had been excited about a new client presentation coming up. "I'm sure they're still discussing it," Margaret said carefully, not wanting to reveal how shocked she was. Big decisions like that take time. But inside, alarm bells were ringing louder than ever. After dinner, as dessert was being served, delicate vanilla panna cotta with berry compote, Derek stood up. He tapped his knife against his champagne glass, the clear ringing sound cutting through the chatter of conversation. "Everyone, if I could have your attention please," Derek called out, his voice carrying easily across the garden. He had that kind of voice, confident, commanding. The kind of voice people naturally listened to. The conversations died down. All eyes turned to Derek. He stood beside Emma, one hand resting on her shoulder. Under the twinkling lights, they looked like something from a magazine spread. Young, beautiful, successful. The golden couple. Margaret's heart began to beat faster. This was it. The toast. The speech. Derek was going to say something beautiful about Emma, about how much he loved her, about how lucky he was. This was the moment that would silence all of Margaret's worries. This was the moment that would prove she'd been wrong to worry. She wanted so badly to be wrong. "First of all," Derek began, his charming smile in full force, "Patricia and I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. It means the world to us to have our friends and family gathered to celebrate this next chapter in our lives. Us. Our lives." Margaret noticed he didn't say, "Emma and I." But maybe she was reading too much into it. Maybe she was being unfairly critical. I met Emma a year ago at a charity gala, Derek continued. She was there representing her firm, and I was there pretending to care about whatever cause we were supporting that night. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Emma's smile looked strained. Had anyone else noticed? But when I saw Emma across that ballroom, something changed. She was beautiful, sure, I mean, look at her. Derek gestured to Emma like she was a prize he'd won. More laughter from the guests. Emma's cheeks flushed pink, and she looked down at her lap. But more than that, Derek went on, I could tell she was different from other girls I'd dated. She was smart. Ambitious. She had her own career, her own life. She wasn't just looking for someone to take care of her. And I respected that. Past tense, Margaret thought. He respected that. Not respects. Respected. Over this past year, I've gotten to know Emma even better, Derek said. And I've realized something important. She's exactly what I need. She's supportive. She's understanding. She knows how to put me first, which is what every man needs in a wife, right? More laughter, but this time it sounded awkward. Uncomfortable. Margaret glanced around and saw several women shifting in their seats. Emma's colleague from dinner was frowning slightly. Derek seemed oblivious to the changing mood. He squeezed Emma's shoulder, pulling her closer to him. Emma's smile had become rigid, frozen on her face like a mask. Emma's going to make the perfect wife and mother, Derek continued. She's already agreed to take a step back from work so she can focus on making our house a home. And trust me, our house is going to need a lot of work. He laughed at his own joke. A few people chuckled along, but many didn't. The atmosphere in the garden had shifted from celebratory to tense. People were exchanging glances. Linda had gone very still beside Margaret. But Derek kept talking, apparently unaware that he was losing his audience. Now, I know some of you might think I'm old-fashioned, he said, his tone becoming more defensive. But I believe in traditional values. A man should lead his household. A woman should support him. That's how my parents' marriage worked, and they've been together for 35 years. Margaret's eyes flicked to Patricia Sullivan, who was nodding approvingly. Richard looked bored, checking his watch. Emma gets that, Derek said. She understands that sometimes, love means sacrifice. It means putting your partner's needs first. It means being a doormat? The words were out of Margaret's mouth before she could stop them. They cut through Derek's speech like a knife, sharp and clear in the suddenly silent garden. Every head turned toward Margaret. Derek's mouth hung open mid-sentence. Emma's eyes went wide with shock and something that looked like horror. Linda grabbed Margaret's arm, her fingernails digging in hard enough to hurt. But Margaret couldn't take the words back now. And honestly, she didn't want to. She stood up slowly, her legs feeling steadier than they had all evening. That knot in her stomach had transformed into something else. Something hot and fierce and protective. I'm sorry, Margaret said, though her tone made it clear she wasn't sorry at all. Did I interrupt your toast? I apologize. Please, continue telling my daughter what her role should be in your marriage. Continue explaining how love means she should give up everything she's worked for. Continue describing her as if she's a possession you've acquired, not a partner you're choosing. The silence in the garden was absolute. Margaret could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. Could hear the rustle of leaves in the old oak trees. Derek's face had gone red. Mrs. Chen, I think you misunderstood. Oh, I understood perfectly, Margaret cut him off. Her voice was calm, controlled, but there was steel underneath. I understood that you just stood in front of all these people and reduced my brilliant, accomplished daughter to a supporting character in your life story. Mom. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Mom, please. Margaret's heart cracked at the pleading in her daughter's voice. Emma looked mortified, her face pale, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. For a moment, just a moment, Margaret wavered. Emma was begging her to stop. Making a scene at Emma's engagement party was exactly what a good mother shouldn't do. This was Emma's night. Margaret was ruining it. But then Margaret looked at Derek. Really looked at him. And what she saw in his eyes wasn't love or concern for Emma's embarrassment. What she saw was anger. Indignation. How dare this woman interrupt him? How dare this woman challenge him? And Margaret knew with absolute certainty, that if she stayed silent now, she would regret it for the rest of her life. "You know what, Derek?" Margaret said, her voice carrying across the garden. "I've spent the last 6 months trying to like you. Trying to convince myself that you were good enough for my daughter. Trying to ignore all the little red flags." "Red flags?" Derek's voice rose, defensive and sharp. "What red flags?" "I've been nothing but good to Emma." "You've been good to yourself," Margaret corrected. "You've molded Emma into what you want her to be. And she's let you, because she loves you. Because she wants to make you happy. But love isn't supposed to make you smaller, Derek. Love is supposed to make you bigger. Stronger. More yourself, not less." Patricia Sullivan stood up abruptly, her face pinched with anger. "How dare you speak to my son this way? This is outrageous. Richard, are you hearing this?" Richard Sullivan finally looked up from his watch, seeming mildly annoyed at being pulled into the drama. But Margaret wasn't intimidated. She'd spent 25 years building a successful architecture firm from the ground up. She'd raised Emma on her own after Emma's father had walked out. She'd survived things these people couldn't imagine. She wasn't about to let some entitled rich boy treat her daughter like a possession. "I dare because I'm her mother," Margaret said simply. "And I will not stand here and watch my daughter disappear into someone else's idea of who she should be." Emma stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the stone patio. Tears were streaming down her face now. "Mom, stop. Just stop. You're embarrassing me. You're ruining everything." Those words hit harder than any of Derek's had. Margaret felt them like a physical blow. Emma was crying. Emma was devastated. Emma thought Margaret was ruining her life. Maybe she was. Margaret's resolve wavered again. What was she doing? This was Emma's choice. Emma's life. Even if Margaret thought Derek was wrong for her, even if every instinct screamed at her that this engagement was a mistake, Emma had to make her own decisions. Emma had to live her own life, make her own mistakes. Except. Margaret remembered being 25. Remembered being in love with someone who made her feel small. Remembered ignoring the red flags because she wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. Remembered the price she'd paid for that willful blindness. She couldn't let Emma pay the same price. "Emma," Margaret said softly, turning her full attention to her daughter. The rest of the guests, the furious Sullivans, the shocked relatives, they all faded away. There was only Emma. Only her daughter, standing there with tears on her cheeks and heartbreak in her eyes. "Baby, I know you're angry with me right now. I know you think I'm overreacting. But I need you to listen to me. Really listen." "I don't want to hear it," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to hear you criticize Derek. I don't want to hear you tell me I'm making a mistake. I love him, Mom. I love him." "I know you do," Margaret said gently. "I can see that. But sweetheart, does he love you? The real you? Or does he love the version of you that agrees with everything he says? The version that promises to have dinner on the table and give up her career and become exactly what he wants?" "That's not fair," Emma protested. "Those are our decisions. Decisions we made together." "Did you?" Margaret pressed. "Did you really decide together? Or did he decide, and you agreed because you wanted to make him happy?" Emma opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She stood there, frozen, her expression caught between anger and something else. something that looked uncomfortably like recognition. Derek stepped forward, inserting himself between Margaret and Emma. "Okay, that's enough," he said firmly. "Mrs. Chen, I think you should leave." The audacity of it, telling Margaret to leave her daughter's engagement party, might have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. "Leave?" Margaret repeated, her eyebrows rising. "You're telling me to leave my daughter's party?" "Your behavior is unacceptable," Patricia Sullivan interjected, moving to stand beside her son. "You've caused a scene. You've insulted Derek. You've upset Emma. The appropriate thing to do is apologize and leave." Margaret looked at Patricia, at Derek, at the circle of Sullivan's closing ranks. Then she looked past them to Emma, who stood alone, tears still streaming down her face. In that moment, Margaret saw something in her daughter's eyes. Not just anger or embarrassment. Something deeper. A flicker of doubt. A question Emma was afraid to ask out loud. "What if Mom is right?" "I'm not leaving," Margaret said quietly. "Not without Emma." "Emma's staying here," Derek said, his hand reaching for Emma's arm. "She's with me." Margaret saw Emma flinch, just slightly, just for a second, when Derek grabbed her. And that tiny flinch told Margaret everything she needed to know. "Emma," Margaret said, holding out her hand to her daughter. "Come with me. Please. Just for a few minutes. Let's talk. Just you and me." "Don't," Derek said sharply to Emma. "Don't go with her. She's trying to manipulate you. She's trying to ruin what we have." Emma looked between Margaret and Derek, trapped between two people she loved, two versions of her future pulling her in opposite directions. "I'm not trying to manipulate you," Margaret said, keeping her voice calm, gentle. "I'm trying to remind you who you are. Who you were before Derek. The Emma who wanted to run her own marketing firm someday. The Emma who said she'd never let any man tell her what to do. The Emma who climbed to the top of that tree when she was 6 years old, even though it scared her, because she wanted to see the view from up there." Emma's breath caught. Margaret saw the memory flash across her daughter's face. "That's the Emma I know," Margaret continued. "Strong. Brave. Unstoppable. And I refuse to watch her pretend to be someone smaller just to fit into someone else's life." The garden was silent. Every guest was watching this private moment play out in public. Margaret knew they'd all be talking about this for months. The mother who ruined the engagement party. The scene. The drama. Let them talk. Emma took a shaky breath. "I need." She stopped, started again. "I need a minute. I need to think." "Emma, don't do this," Derek said, his voice taking on a pleading quality. "Don't let her poison your mind against me. Everything I said tonight, I said it because I love you. Because I want us to have a good life together." "I know," Emma whispered. "I know you do." But she pulled her arm free from Derek's grip. She took one step toward Margaret. Then another. And then she was in Margaret's arms, crying into her mother's shoulder the way she used to when she was little and the world felt too big and scary. Margaret held her daughter tight, one hand stroking her hair, whispering, "It's okay. You're okay. I've got you." Over Emma's shoulder, Margaret met Derek's eyes. What she saw there chilled her. Not heartbreak at losing Emma. Not worry for Emma's well-being. Just cold, calculating anger. And in that moment, Margaret knew the fight had only just begun. Wait a minute. What would you do if you saw your daughter about to marry someone who would never truly see her? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you risk everything to save her? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I need to know what you think Margaret should do next, because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. The car ride home was silent except for Emma's quiet crying in the passenger seat. Margaret kept her eyes on the road, her hands steady on the wheel even though her heart was racing. The streetlights cast moving shadows across the dashboard as they drove through the familiar neighborhoods toward Margaret's house. Margaret wanted to say something, anything, to comfort her daughter. But every word that came to mind felt inadequate. Sorry? She wasn't sorry for what she'd said. It's going to be okay? She didn't know if it was. I love you. Emma already knew that, and it clearly wasn't enough right now. So Margaret stayed quiet and let Emma cry. They'd left the party in chaos. Derek had tried to follow them, demanding that Emma stay, that they talk this through like adults. Patricia Sullivan had been practically shouting about disrespect and inappropriate behavior. The guests had all stood frozen, champagne glasses forgotten, watching the drama unfold like it was a television show. Linda had caught Margaret's eye as they left, her expression torn between concern and disapproval. Robert had looked uncomfortable. Emma's colleagues had seemed shocked. And through it all, Emma had walked beside Margaret with her head down, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, her hand clutched in her mother's. Now, pulling into the driveway of the house where Emma had grown up, Margaret finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. She'd just blown up her daughter's engagement party. She'd publicly humiliated Derek Sullivan. She'd made Emma choose between her mother and her fiancé in front of 50 people. What kind of mother does that? The kind who can't watch her daughter make the same mistakes she did, Margaret reminded herself. The kind who remembers what it feels like to lose yourself in someone else's expectations. Margaret turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy, oppressive. Emma had stopped crying, but she hadn't moved. She sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead at the closed garage door. Emma, Margaret said softly. I don't want to talk about it. Emma's voice was hoarse from crying. Okay. I'm serious, Mom. I don't want to hear how you were right. I don't want to hear I told you so. I don't want, Emma's voice broke. She pressed her hands against her face. I just don't want to talk. Margaret's heart ached. Then we won't talk. Come inside. I'll make tea. I don't want tea. Then you can sit on the couch and I'll make tea for myself. Margaret reached over and gently touched Emma's shoulder. Please, baby. Come inside. Don't sit out here in the car. For a long moment, Emma didn't move. Then, slowly, she nodded and opened the car door. Inside the house, Margaret flipped on lights while Emma walked straight to the living room couch and curled up in the corner, the same corner she'd always claimed as hers when she was younger. The corner where she'd done homework, read books, had long phone conversations with friends. The corner where she'd sat the night before she left for college, both excited and terrified about the future. Margaret went to the kitchen and put the kettle on, even though Emma had said she didn't want tea. She needed something to do with her hands. Needed the familiar ritual of choosing tea bags, getting out mugs, waiting for the water to boil. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out and saw 3 missed calls from Linda and a text message, "Call me now." Margaret silenced her phone and set it face down on the counter. She'd deal with Linda later. Right now, Emma needed her. The kettle whistled. Margaret poured hot water over chamomile tea bags, Emma's favorite since childhood, and carried both mugs to the living room. She set one on the coffee table in front of Emma and settled into the armchair across from her. Emma stared at the tea but didn't touch it. They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, giving Emma space, giving her time. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily. Outside, a car drove past. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. Finally, Emma spoke. Everyone's going to be talking about this. Probably, Margaret agreed. Derek's mother is going to hate me forever. She might. Derek. Emma's voice wavered. Derek is probably so angry right now. Margaret set down her mug carefully. Are you worried about him being angry? Or are you worried about what he might do when he's angry? Emma's eyes snapped to Margaret's. What's that supposed to mean? I'm asking if you're afraid of him. No. Emma said it too quickly, too forcefully. No, Derek would never, he's not violent or anything. He has a temper sometimes. When things don't go his way. Margaret's chest tightened. What happens when he has a temper? Nothing. He just gets quiet. Cold. He gives me the silent treatment for a few days until I apologize. Emma realized what she'd said and quickly added, but that's normal. That's what couples do. They fight and then they make up. Emma, healthy couples talk through their fights. They don't punish each other with silence. You're twisting everything, Emma said, but there was no real conviction in her voice. You're making it sound worse than it is. Tell me what it is, then, Margaret said gently. Tell me what your relationship with Derek really looks like when it's just the two of you. Emma pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. She looked impossibly young in that moment, like the little girl she'd been, the one who'd come to Margaret with every scraped knee and hurt feeling. It's fine, Emma whispered. Most of the time, it's really good. Derek can be so sweet. He brings me flowers. He takes me to nice restaurants. He tells me I'm beautiful. But? Margaret prompted. Emma was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. But sometimes I feel like I'm not enough. Like no matter what I do, it's not quite right. My career is too demanding. My friends are too loud. My apartment is too messy. The way I dress is too casual. The way I laugh is too much. Each word landed like a stone in Margaret's stomach. He doesn't say it meanly, Emma continued quickly, as if defending him. He says it like he's trying to help me. Like he's trying to make me better. More sophisticated. More like the kind of woman a Sullivan man should marry. Emma, do you hear yourself? Margaret leaned forward. You're talking about changing everything about who you are to become what he wants. That's what love is, isn't it? Emma looked up, and Margaret saw genuine confusion in her daughter's eyes. Compromise? Changing for each other? No, baby. Love is accepting each other as you are and growing together. Not one person molding the other into a different shape. Emma's phone buzzed on the couch beside her. She glanced at it, and Margaret saw her face pale. Derek? Margaret guessed. Emma nodded. He's called 17 times. And he's texted. She scrolled through her phone. A lot. What do the texts say? He wants me to come over. He says we need to talk. He says. Emma's voice got smaller. He says if I don't come over tonight, he'll assume I'm choosing you over him. That I'm throwing away our entire future because my mother can't mind her own business. The casual cruelty of it made Margaret want to throw something. That's manipulation, Emma. Or it's honesty, Emma countered, but she didn't sound convinced. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am choosing you over him. You're not choosing between us, Margaret said firmly. You're choosing between losing yourself and staying yourself. That's the real choice here. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, she turned it face down without looking at it. I don't know what to do. You don't have to decide tonight. Yes, I do. Emma's voice rose with frustration. Don't you see? If I don't respond to him, if I don't go over there and apologize and fix this, it's over. The engagement is over. The wedding is off. Everything we've planned. Were you planning it, or was Derek? Emma opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? The wedding. The one you've been planning. Is it the wedding you want? Or is it the wedding Derek wants? It's... Emma trailed off. Margaret could practically see the gears turning in her daughter's mind. Derek has strong opinions about things. About how a proper wedding should be. His family has traditions. Expectations. What do you want, Emma? I want Derek to be happy. That's not what I asked. Margaret kept her voice gentle but insistent. What do you want? If there were no expectations, no traditions, no Derek telling you what a proper wedding should look like, what would your wedding look like? Emma stared at her mother for a long moment. Then, to Margaret's surprise, she started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that's close to crying, the kind that comes when you realize something absurd and terrible all at once. I don't know, Emma said through her laughter tears. I don't even know what I want my own wedding to look like. How messed up is that? It's not messed up, Margaret said. It's what happens when you spend so much time trying to be what someone else needs that you forget what you need. The laughter died away, and Emma buried her face in her hands. I'm so tired, Mom. I'm so tired of trying to be perfect. Perfect girlfriend. Perfect fiancée. Perfect future wife. I'm tired of watching what I say and how I dress and making sure I don't laugh too loud or have too many opinions. I'm just tired. Margaret moved from the armchair to the couch, pulling Emma into her arms. Then stop. Stop trying to be perfect for him. Stop trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. But I love him, Emma sobbed into Margaret's shoulder. Why isn't that enough? Oh, sweetheart. Margaret stroked Emma's hair, her own eyes burning with tears. Love should never require you to become less than you are. If he really loved you, the real you, he wouldn't want you to change. He'd love the loud laugh and the messy apartment and the ambitious career. He'd love all of it because it's you. Emma cried harder, and Margaret just held her, rocking her gently the way she'd done when Emma was small and the world had hurt her. Outside, the night grew darker. The house grew quieter. And slowly, Emma's sobs subsided into exhausted hiccups. I don't know how to do this, Emma finally said, her voice muffled against Margaret's shoulder. I don't know how to walk away from him. You don't have to decide that tonight either, Margaret said. Tonight, you just need to rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next step together. Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. I need to at least text him back. Tell him I'm okay. Tell him I need time to think. Margaret wanted to say no, wanted to tell Emma not to engage with Derek at all tonight. But Emma was an adult. She had to make her own choices, even if Margaret disagreed with them. Okay, Margaret said. But Emma? When you text him, pay attention to how he responds. A partner who loves you will respect your need for space. A partner who wants to control you will push back. Will make you feel guilty for needing time. Emma nodded slowly. She picked up her phone and typed out a message. Margaret couldn't see what she wrote, but she saw Emma's finger hover over the send button for several long seconds before she finally pressed it. They both stared at the phone, waiting for Derek's response. It came within 30 seconds. Emma read it, and the color drained from her face. What did he say? Margaret asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Emma turned her phone so Margaret could see the screen. Derek, are you serious right now? You need time? After your mother humiliated me in front of everyone? After she made me look like an idiot at our engagement party? And you're the one who needs time? This is unbelievable. You know what? Take all the time you need. But don't expect me to wait around while you figure out whether your mommy's opinion matters more than our relationship. I'm done being treated like this. Margaret felt her blood turn to ice. This was it. The mask dropping. The real Derek showing himself. He's trying to make you feel guilty, Margaret said carefully. He's trying to make this your fault. But it is my fault, Emma said, her voice thick with tears again. I left with you. I chose you over him. He has a right to be upset. He has a right to be upset. He doesn't have a right to manipulate you. Margaret pointed at the screen. Look at this message, Emma. Really look at it. He's not saying he's hurt. He's not saying he wants to understand your feelings. He's blaming you for my actions. He's giving you an ultimatum. And he's threatening to end the relationship if you don't immediately do what he wants. Emma stared at the phone. Maybe if I call him. No. The word came out sharper than Margaret intended. She softened her tone. Emma, please. Please don't call him tonight. You're exhausted. You're emotional. You're vulnerable. If you call him now, he's going to say whatever he needs to say to get you back under his control. Wait until tomorrow. Wait until you've had some sleep, some distance, some clarity. He's going to think I don't care about him. Then let him think that for one night. Margaret took Emma's hands in hers. Baby, I know this is hard. I know you love him. But I need you to trust me. Trust your gut. Trust the part of you that felt exhausted and small and tired of being perfect. That part of you knows the truth. Emma looked at their joined hands. Her engagement ring caught the light, that massive diamond that cost more than Margaret's car. It was beautiful. It was also a symbol of everything Derek expected Emma to be. Expensive. Perfect. Impressive. I should take this off, Emma whispered, touching the ring with her other hand. You don't have to decide that tonight either. I feel like it's suffocating me. Emma twisted the ring on her finger. Is that crazy? It's just a ring. It's beautiful. It's worth a fortune. But every time I look at it, I feel like it's getting tighter. Like I can't breathe. Without another word, Emma slid the ring off her finger and set it on the coffee table. It sat there between them, glittering and cold. Emma stared at her bare hand. I've been wearing that for 4 months. My finger feels weird without it. It'll adjust, Margaret said gently. Emma's phone buzzed again. Another text from Derek. And another. And another. Emma turned the phone over so they couldn't see the screen, but they could still hear the constant buzzing. Make it stop, Emma whispered. Please, make it stop. Margaret took the phone and turned it off completely. The sudden silence was almost jarring. Come on, Margaret said, standing and pulling Emma to her feet. Let's get you to bed. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, everything will still be there to deal with. But tonight, you sleep. Emma followed Margaret upstairs like a sleepwalker. Her old bedroom was exactly as she'd left it when she'd moved out 3 years ago, band posters on the walls, books on the shelves, photos pinned to a bulletin board. Margaret had kept it as a time capsule, a reminder of who Emma had been before the world started telling her to be someone else. Emma stood in the doorway, looking at the room with something like wonder on her face. I forgot how much I loved this room. It's still yours, Margaret said. It'll always be yours. Emma walked to the bulletin board, trailing her fingers over old photos. Emma at her high school graduation, grinning huge in her cap and gown. Emma at the beach with her college friends, sun-kissed and laughing. Emma receiving an award at her first marketing job, looking proud and confident and entirely herself. I look so happy in these, Emma said quietly. When did I stop looking like that? The question hung in the air between them. Margaret wanted to say, the day you met Derek. The day you started trying to be someone else. The day you decided your own happiness was less important than his approval. But Emma needed to come to those realizations herself. Get some sleep, Margaret said instead. We'll talk more tomorrow. She kissed Emma's forehead and left her daughter standing in the room of her past, looking at photos of a girl who knew how to be happy. Margaret went back downstairs and sat on the couch, Emma's engagement ring still glittering on the coffee table. She picked it up, feeling the weight of it, the cold hardness of the diamond. This ring cost a fortune. It was exactly the kind of ring society said every woman should want. Big. Expensive. Impressive. And Emma had taken it off with relief. Margaret set the ring back down and finally allowed herself to check her phone. 23 missed calls. 47 text messages. Most from Linda, but several from numbers she didn't recognize. And one from Derek himself. She opened Derek's message first. Derek, Mrs. Chin, I think we need to have a conversation about boundaries. Emma is my fiancée. She's going to be my wife. You need to accept that and stop trying to control her life. What you did tonight was completely out of line. You owe me an apology. You owe Emma an apology. And you need to fix this. Tell Emma to come home. Now. The audacity of it would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. Home. As if Emma's home was with him. As if Emma belonged to him. As if Margaret had any obligation to help him manipulate her daughter. Margaret deleted the message without responding. Next, she opened Linda's texts. They started concerned and grew increasingly frantic. Linda, where did you go? Everyone's asking. Linda, Derek is furious. Patricia is threatening to sue you for emotional distress. She can't actually do that, but still. Linda, Maggie, call me. This is serious. Linda, Emma's colleagues are taking your side, just so you know. They're saying Derek had it coming. Linda, are you okay? Is Emma okay? I'm worried. Margaret texted back, Emma is with me. We're both fine. Talk tomorrow. Linda responded immediately, thank God. I was about to drive over there. Maggie, you did the right thing. I know I looked upset at the party, but you did the right thing. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed to hear that until Linda said it. She scrolled through the other messages. Several were from Emma's colleagues, expressing support and asking if Emma was okay. 2 were from distant relatives who'd been at the party, both critical of Margaret's behavior. 1 was from a number she didn't recognize at all. She opened that last message. Unknown, Mrs. Chen, my name is Melissa Richardson. We've never met, but I was Derek's girlfriend before Emma. I was at the party tonight as a guest of Derek's college friend. I need to talk to you. What you said tonight, you have no idea how right you are. Please call me. This is important. Margaret stared at the message for a long moment. Derek's ex-girlfriend? Why would she want to talk? What could she possibly have to say? But even as Margaret questioned it, she knew she was going to call. Because if there was information about Derek that Emma needed to know, information that might help her daughter understand who she'd almost married, Margaret would do anything to get it. She saved the number and typed back, I'll call you tomorrow. The response came quickly, thank you. Emma needs to know the truth about who Derek really is. Margaret set down her phone and leaned back against the couch, suddenly exhausted. Her body felt heavy, her mind spinning. In the space of a few hours, she destroyed an engagement party, alienated half her family, made enemies of the Sullivan family, and possibly saved her daughter from a terrible mistake. Was it worth it? Margaret looked at the engagement ring on the coffee table, then at the stairs leading up to Emma's room. Yes. It was worth it. Whatever came next, whatever consequences, whatever backlash, whatever fights, it was worth it to see Emma start to remember who she really was. Margaret turned off the lights and climbed the stairs. She paused outside Emma's door, listening. She could hear quiet crying from inside. Her heart ached, but she didn't interrupt. Emma needed to cry. Needed to grieve. Needed to feel all the complicated emotions of watching a relationship fall apart. Tomorrow, they'd face the aftermath together. Tomorrow, Margaret would call Melissa Richardson and find out what Derek's ex-girlfriend wanted to say. Tomorrow, they'd start figuring out how Emma would move forward. But tonight, Margaret had done what mothers do. She protected her child. Even when it hurt. Even when it was hard. Even when her child didn't want to be protected. Margaret went to her own bedroom and lay down fully clothed on top of the covers. She was too wired to sleep, too full of adrenaline and worry and fierce protective love. She thought about Emma at 6 years old, climbing that tree. She thought about Emma at 18, heading off to college with nervous excitement in her eyes. She thought about Emma at 23, getting her first real job and calling Margaret to share the good news. She thought about all the versions of Emma she'd known, confident, creative, funny, smart, kind. And she thought about the Emma she'd seen tonight at the party. The one with the hollow smile and tired eyes. The one who'd forgotten how to laugh too loud or have too many opinions. That wasn't her daughter. That was Derek's version of her daughter. Margaret's phone buzzed one more time. She almost didn't look, but something made her check. It was Emma, texting from her old room down the hall. Emma, thank you for not letting me go back to him tonight. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, but thank you for giving me tonight to think. Margaret felt tears roll down her cheeks as she typed back, that's what mothers are for. I love you. Always. Emma, I love you too. Even when I'm mad at you. Margaret, especially when you're mad at me. Now go to sleep. Emma, I'll try. Mom? Margaret, yes? Emma, that speech Derek gave tonight, did I really agree to all those things? To quit my job and have dinner on the table and be the perfect wife? Margaret's fingers hovered over her phone. She chose her words carefully. Margaret, I think Derek made a lot of assumptions about what you agreed to. And I think you were so focused on making him happy that you didn't always speak up when his assumptions were wrong. Emma, that's a nice way of saying I lost myself. Margaret, you didn't lose yourself. You just forgot yourself for a while. But you're still in there. I saw her tonight when you took off that ring. There was a long pause. Then, I'm scared. Margaret, I know, baby. But brave doesn't mean not scared. Brave means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. Emma, like climbing that tree? Margaret, exactly like climbing that tree. Emma, I was so scared that day. I remember my hands shaking on the branches. But the view from the top was so beautiful. I could see everything. Margaret, you can see everything from up here too. That's why it's scary. But also why it's worth it. Emma, good night, Mom. Margaret, good night, sweetheart. Margaret set her phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know if Emma would stay strong or if Derek would find some way to pull her back. Didn't know what Melissa Richardson wanted to tell her about Derek. Didn't know how the Sullivan family would retaliate. But for tonight, Emma was safe. For tonight, Emma was home. For tonight, that was enough. Margaret finally felt sleep pulling at her, heavy and insistent. Just before she drifted off, one thought surfaced clearly in her mind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Derek Sullivan wasn't the type to let go easily. He'd fight for Emma, not because he loved her, but because he saw her as his. As something he'd claimed and wouldn't surrender. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. And Margaret would be ready. The next morning, Margaret woke to the smell of coffee brewing. For a confused moment, she thought she'd imagined the events of the previous night. Then she saw that she was still in her dress from the party, wrinkled and uncomfortable, and reality came crashing back. Emma was making coffee. Emma had stayed the night. The engagement party had been a disaster. Margaret changed quickly into comfortable clothes, jeans and a soft sweater, and went downstairs. Emma was in the kitchen, standing at the counter with her back to the doorway. She wore one of Margaret's old t-shirts and a pair of pajama pants, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. She looked young and vulnerable and lost. "Morning," Margaret said softly, not wanting to startle her. Emma turned. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but there was something different about her face this morning. Something clearer, more focused. "Morning," Emma replied. She poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed one to Margaret. "I've been up since 5. Couldn't sleep anymore." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared thousands of meals over the years. The same table where Emma had done her homework, where they'd had serious conversations about life and boys and futures. The same table where, one devastating night years ago, Margaret had told 15-year-old Emma that her father wasn't coming back. "How are you feeling?" Margaret asked. Emma wrapped both hands around her coffee mug, as if drawing warmth from it. "Empty. Confused. sad, relieved, terrified. All at once. That sounds about right. I turned my phone back on this morning, Emma said quietly. Derek called 43 times last night after I turned it off. He left 17 voicemails. And the texts. She shook her head. I've never seen him like this. Margaret's protective instincts flared. Like what? Desperate. Angry. Then sweet and apologetic. Then angry again. It's like watching someone cycle through every emotion trying to figure out which one will work. Emma looked up at Margaret. That's manipulation, isn't it? What you were talking about last night? Yes, Margaret said gently. That's exactly what manipulation looks like. Emma nodded slowly, like she was absorbing this information, trying to fit it into her understanding of the person she'd planned to marry. I listened to some of the voicemails. In the first one, he said I was being childish and irrational. In the third one, he said he loved me and couldn't live without me. In the seventh one, he said if I didn't call him back immediately, he'd come over here and get me himself. Margaret's blood ran cold. He threatened to come here? I don't think he meant it as a threat. I think he just... Emma trailed off. I was going to say he just doesn't handle rejection well. But that's not okay, is it? That's not a normal response. No, baby. It's not. Emma took a shaky sip of coffee. There's more. This morning, he texted me. He said he talked to his mom and they've decided to give me 24 hours to come to my senses. If I'm not back by tonight, they're calling off the wedding and telling everyone it's because I'm mentally unstable and manipulated by my controlling mother. The words hung in the air like poison. They're going to what? Margaret's voice came out flat, dangerous. Ruin my reputation, Emma said simply. Patricia knows everyone in this city. She's on the boards of 5 different charities. She has connections everywhere. If she tells people I'm unstable, if she says I humiliated her son and their family, it'll follow me forever. My career, my social life, everything. Margaret felt rage building in her chest, not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, calculated kind. The kind that made plans. They're trying to scare you into going back. It's working. Emma's voice was small. Mom, I can't have the entire Sullivan family as enemies. They have too much power. Too many connections. They could destroy me. Or, Margaret said carefully, you could stand your ground and show them that you won't be bullied. Easy for you to say, Emma shot back, then immediately looked apologetic. Sorry. You don't understand what it's like to be my age, trying to build a career, needing connections and networking and a good reputation. The Sullivans could end all of that with a few phone calls. Margaret was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've never told you before. Emma looked up, surprised by the shift in Margaret's tone. I told you that your father left when you were 6 months old, Margaret continued. That's true. What I didn't tell you was why he left. Emma set down her coffee mug, giving Margaret her full attention. Your father's name was James Worthington, Margaret said. The name felt strange on her tongue after so many years of not saying it. He was from a wealthy family, a lot like the Sullivans actually. Old money. Big connections. His family owned half the real estate in the business district. I know, Emma said quietly. I Googled him once when I was in college. The Worthington family. I saw his photo in some business magazine article. Margaret nodded, unsurprised. Of course Emma had looked. What you don't know is that when I got pregnant with you, James promised me everything. He said he loved me. He said we'd get married and raise you together. He said his family would welcome us both. Emma leaned forward, hanging on every word. But when I was 5 months pregnant, James's mother, your grandmother, though she never acted like it, came to visit me. She sat in this very kitchen and told me that I wasn't good enough for her son. That I came from nothing. That I had no family name, no connections, no breeding. She offered me money to disappear. To go away and never contact James again. Emma's eyes widened. What did you do? I told her to get out of my house, Margaret said simply. I told her I didn't want her money. I told her I loved James and he loved me and we were going to be a family. But he left anyway. He did. Margaret's voice was steady despite the old pain. 3 months after you were born, his mother gave him an ultimatum. Choose us or choose his inheritance. Choose us or choose his family's approval. Choose us or choose the life he'd always known. He chose them, Emma whispered. He did. And for years, I was angry. I was hurt. I felt like I'd failed you by not being enough to make him stay. Margaret reached across the table and took Emma's hand. But I learned something important, baby. People like the Worthingtons, like the Sullivans, they hold power over you only if you care what they think. The moment you stop caring, the moment you decide your own integrity matters more than their approval, they lose all their power. Emma's eyes were shining with tears. You never told me any of this. I wanted to protect you from it. From knowing that your father chose money and status over you. But maybe I was wrong to keep it from you. Because now you're facing the same choice I faced, and you need to know that choosing yourself, choosing your own dignity and self-worth, is always the right choice, even when it's hard. But you lost everything, Emma said. Dad's family had connections too. They could have helped your career, your business. You had to build everything from scratch because you walked away. And I did build it, Margaret reminded her gently. I built a successful architecture firm. I raised you. I created a life I'm proud of. Yes, it was harder without the Worthington family's help. But it was mine. Every achievement, every success, I earned it. And nobody could ever take that away from me. Emma squeezed Margaret's hand. You're saying I should let Derek and his family tell lies about me. Let them try to ruin my reputation. And just rebuild? I'm saying that your reputation isn't as fragile as Derek wants you to believe. You're talented. You're smart. You're good at your job. The people who matter, your colleagues, your real friends, they know who you are. They saw what happened at that party. Some of them even texted you afterward to make sure you were okay, didn't they? Emma nodded slowly. Yeah. 6 of my coworkers texted. They all said Derek was out of line. Because they saw the truth. Derek showed everyone who he really is when he made that speech. And you showed everyone who you are when you walked away with your head held high. Emma wiped at her eyes. I didn't feel like my head was held high. I felt like I was falling apart. You were brave, Margaret said firmly. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared or hurt. It means doing the right thing despite the fear. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their thoughts. Then Emma spoke again, her voice uncertain. Mom? What if I'm making a mistake? What if Derek's right and you did poison my mind against him? What if I'm throwing away a good man because of one bad speech? Margaret had been waiting for this question. She knew it would come. Doubt was natural, especially for someone as kind-hearted as Emma. Let me ask you something, Margaret said. In the year you've been with Derek, how many times have you felt small? Emma's brow furrowed. What do you mean? How many times has Derek made you feel like you're not quite good enough? Like you need to change something about yourself to deserve his love? Emma opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Her eyes grew distant, as if she was searching through memories. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. A lot. More than I want to admit. Tell me, Margaret encouraged gently. Tell me about those times. Emma took a shaky breath. There was the time 3 months ago when I got promoted at work. I was so excited. I called Derek immediately to tell him. And he said congratulations, but then he asked if the promotion meant I'd be working longer hours. When I said probably, he got quiet. Then he said maybe I should think about whether the promotion was really worth it. Whether I should be focusing on my career or on preparing to be a wife. Margaret's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet, letting Emma continue. And there was the time we went to his college friend's wedding, Emma went on, the words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. I wore this dress I loved, bright red, kind of bold. Derek took one look at me and said I looked like I was trying too hard to get attention. He made me change into something more appropriate. Something beige and boring. What else? Margaret asked softly. My friends, Emma said, her voice breaking. I used to have game nights with my college friends every month. We'd get together, play board games, laugh until we couldn't breathe. Derek came a few times, but he always seemed annoyed. He said they were immature. That I was too old for that kind of thing. That I should be networking with more sophisticated people. So I stopped going. I told my friends I was too busy, but really, I was just tired of Derek making me feel childish for wanting to spend time with them. Each revelation was like a knife to Margaret's heart. She'd suspected, but hearing it laid out so clearly was devastating. And the worst part? Emma continued, tears streaming freely now. The worst part is that I convinced myself it was okay. That Derek was just trying to help me grow up. That he was pushing me to be better. I told myself that love meant sacrifice, that relationships required compromise. But it wasn't compromise, was it? It was just me giving up pieces of myself until there wasn't much left. Oh, baby, Margaret whispered, moving her chair closer to pull Emma into her arms. Emma cried into Margaret's shoulder, her whole body shaking. How did I let this happen? How did I become someone I don't even recognize? Because you loved him, Margaret said, stroking Emma's hair. And because people like Derek are good at making you believe their way is the right way. They don't change you all at once. They do it slowly, gradually, so you don't even notice until one day you wake up and realize you've lost yourself. Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't want to go back to him. Even if the Sullivans try to destroy my reputation, even if it makes everything harder, I don't want to go back. Relief flooded through Margaret so powerfully it almost hurt. You don't have to. But I need to tell him. I can't just ghost him. He deserves to know it's really over. Margaret wanted to argue that Derek deserved nothing, but Emma was right. This needed a proper ending, not a trail of unanswered calls and texts. Okay, Margaret said. But not alone. I'll go with you. No, Emma said firmly. This is something I need to do myself. But... She paused, looking uncertain. Could you wait outside? In the car? Just in case? Of course, Margaret agreed immediately. She didn't like it, but she understood. Emma needed to reclaim her own power, her own voice. She needed to face Derek and say no. But we're calling Melissa Richardson first. Emma blinked, confused. Who? Derek's ex-girlfriend. She texted me last night. She says she needs to talk to us about Derek. About who he really is. Emma's face paled. His ex? Derek never talks about his exes. He always says he had a few casual relationships but nothing serious before me. Well, Margaret said, reaching for her phone, maybe it's time we find out why. Margaret pulled up the text message from Melissa Richardson and dialed the number. Emma sat across from her, arms wrapped around herself, looking small and anxious. The phone rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello? Melissa Richardson? This is Margaret Chen. You texted me last night about my daughter Emma and Derek Sullivan. Oh, thank God you called. The relief in Melissa's voice was palpable. I've been sitting by my phone all morning hoping you would. Is Emma with you? Can she hear me? Margaret put the phone on speaker. She's here. You're on speaker now. Emma, Melissa's voice was gentle but urgent, you don't know me, but I need to tell you something important. Derek and I dated for 2 years. We were engaged. Emma's eyes went wide. Engaged? But Derek said. I know what Derek probably said, Melissa interrupted. That he never had anything serious before you, right? That's what he tells everyone. But we were engaged. We had a wedding date. I had a dress. And then, 3 months before the wedding, I called it off. Why? Emma asked, leaning toward the phone. Melissa was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. Because I realized that the man I fell in love with and the man I was engaged to were two completely different people. The Derek I met was charming, attentive, supportive of my career. The Derek I was engaged to was controlling, critical, and slowly isolating me from everyone I loved. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Margaret reached over and squeezed her other hand. It started small, Melissa continued. Comments about my clothes, my friends, my career. Suggestions about how I could be better, more sophisticated, more worthy of the Sullivan name. At first, I thought he was trying to help me. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd quit my job, cut ties with most of my friends, and was planning a wedding that felt more like a business merger than a celebration of love. Oh my God, Emma whispered. I was at your engagement party last night as a +1 for Derek's friend Marcus, Melissa said. When I saw you standing there, looking exactly like I used to look, that smile that doesn't reach your eyes, that tension in your shoulders, I knew I had to warn you. And then when your mother stood up and said what she said, when she called Derek out in front of everyone, I wanted to stand up and applaud. Emma was crying again, but this time there was something like relief mixed with the pain. Relief that she wasn't crazy, that her instincts had been right, that she wasn't the only one who'd experienced this. What made you finally leave? Margaret asked. Melissa exhaled slowly. My sister. She sat me down 3 months before the wedding and told me she didn't recognize me anymore. She said I'd become a shadow of myself. She said if I married Derek, she was afraid she'd lose me forever. And when she said that, something inside me just woke up. I realized she was right. I realized I'd rather be alone than be Derek's perfect wife. What happened when you called off the wedding? Emma asked. Exactly what you're probably afraid will happen, Melissa said honestly. Patricia Sullivan launched a campaign against me. She told everyone I was unstable, that I'd led Derek on, that I was gold digger who panicked when she realized what being a Sullivan really meant. For about 6 months, my life was hell. People I thought were friends stopped calling. I lost a few clients because of rumors the Sullivans spread. It was brutal. Emma's face crumpled. I can't do this. I can't handle that. Wait, Melissa said quickly. Listen to the rest. After 6 months, things started to change. The people who really mattered, my family, my real friends, my professional contacts who actually knew my work, they all stood by me. And the people who believed the Sullivans' lies? They weren't people I wanted in my life anyway. Within a year, I'd rebuilt everything. I had a better job, better friends, better life. And I was free. Free, Emma repeated softly, as if tasting the word. I won't lie to you, Melissa said. The next few months are going to be hard. The Sullivans don't like losing, and Derek especially doesn't like being rejected. He's going to try everything to get you back or punish you for leaving. But Emma, you have to trust me on this. Whatever they do to you is nothing compared to what you'll lose if you marry him. They can hurt your reputation for a few months. Derek will destroy your soul for a lifetime. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. I need to meet you, Emma said suddenly. Can we meet? Today? Yes, Melissa said immediately. Absolutely. There's more I need to tell you. Things about Derek that you should know. Things I wish someone had told me before I wasted 2 years of my life. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in 2 hours. When Margaret hung up, Emma sat back in her chair, looking simultaneously devastated and determined. I'm doing the right thing, Emma said, but it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. Even if it's hard, even if the Sullivans come after me, I'm doing the right thing. You are, Margaret confirmed. You absolutely are. Emma's phone buzzed on the table. Another text from Derek. Emma looked at it, and her expression hardened. What does it say? Margaret asked. Emma turned the phone so Margaret could see. Derek, time's ticking, Emma. My mother is already making phone calls. Last chance to fix this before you ruin your own life. Instead of fear, Margaret saw something new flash across Emma's face. Anger. Good, healthy anger. Emma picked up her phone and typed out a response. Her fingers moved quickly, decisively. Emma, Derek, this engagement is over. I'm not coming back. Please stop contacting me. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then immediately blocked Derek's number. There, Emma said, her voice shaking but firm. It's done. Margaret felt pride swell in her chest. How do you feel? Terrified, Emma admitted. But also, lighter? Like I just put down something really heavy that I've been carrying for too long. That's exactly what you did, Margaret said softly. Emma stood up abruptly. I need to shower and change before we meet Melissa. And Mom? Thank you. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up even when I didn't want to hear it. Thank you for. Her voice broke. Thank you for loving me enough to risk our relationship to save me from a terrible mistake. Margaret pulled Emma into a fierce hug. Always, baby. Always. As Emma headed upstairs to get ready, Margaret sat alone in the kitchen, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours. They weren't out of the woods yet. Derek would escalate. The Sullivans would retaliate. There would be hard days ahead. But Emma had found her voice again. Emma had remembered who she was. And that, Margaret thought, was worth any battle they'd have to face. 2 hours later, Margaret and Emma sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop downtown, waiting for Melissa Richardson. Emma was nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup, glancing at the door every few seconds. What if she doesn't show? Emma asked. She'll show, Margaret said with certainty. She wouldn't have reached out if she didn't think it was important. As if on cue, the door opened and a woman walked in. She was tall, blonde, professionally dressed in tailored pants and a crisp white blouse. She looked around the coffee shop until her eyes landed on Margaret and Emma. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something that looked like sympathy. Melissa walked over to their table with confident strides. Up close, Margaret could see she was probably in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Emma? Melissa asked gently. Emma nodded, standing up awkwardly. Yes. Hi. Thank you for meeting us. Thank you for calling, Melissa said, pulling Emma into an unexpected hug. Emma stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into it. When they pulled apart, both women had tears in their eyes. I'm sorry for what you're going through. I know how much it hurts. They all sat down, and for a moment, nobody spoke. Then Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I want to show you something, she said, pulling up a photo and sliding the phone across to Emma. This is me 2.5 years ago. 2 months before I met Derek. Emma looked at the photo and gasped softly. Margaret leaned over to see. The woman in the photo was clearly Melissa, but she looked completely different. Her smile was genuine and bright. Her eyes sparkled. She wore bright colors and bold jewelry. She looked confident, vibrant, fully alive. Now look at this one, Melissa said, swiping to another photo. This is me the week before I called off the wedding. The contrast was shocking. This Melissa looked polished and perfect, expensive clothes, understated jewelry, professional hair and makeup. But her smile was hollow. Her eyes looked dead. She looked like a mannequin, beautiful but empty. I didn't even recognize myself anymore, Melissa said quietly. I'd become exactly what Derek and his mother wanted me to be. The perfect Sullivan wife. Elegant. Sophisticated. Quiet. Agreeable. And completely miserable. Emma stared at the photos, her hands trembling slightly. I have photos like this. I was looking at them last night. Photos of me from before Derek, when I looked happy. Really happy. That's because you were happy, Melissa said gently. You were yourself. Derek has a talent for finding strong, successful, interesting women and slowly convincing them that who they are isn't quite good enough. That they need to change, improve, evolve. But what he really means is that you need to become smaller, quieter, more convenient for him. Did he ever? Emma paused, as if afraid to ask the question. Did he ever hurt you? Physically? No, Melissa said. Derek's too smart for that. He doesn't need to use physical violence. He's mastered emotional manipulation. The silent treatment when you displease him. The cutting comments disguised as concern. The way he makes you feel like you're crazy for being upset about things that are genuinely upsetting. Emma nodded, tears spilling over. Yes. Exactly that. I'd try to tell him when something he said hurt my feelings, and he'd say I was being oversensitive. That I was creating drama. That I was the problem. Gaslighting, Margaret said quietly. Both younger women looked at her. That's what it's called. Making you doubt your own perceptions and feelings. Making you think you're the crazy one. His mother is even worse, Melissa continued. Patricia Sullivan is a master manipulator. She taught Derek everything he knows. She'll smile to your face while systematically destroying your confidence. She once told me that my laugh was common, and that I should work on cultivating a more refined sense of humor. Emma's eyes widened. She told me my career was cute, but that I should be thinking about my real purpose, being a wife and mother. She told me my friends were holding me back from my potential, Melissa added. That if I wanted to be part of the Sullivan family, I needed to upgrade my social circle. The two women looked at each other, and something passed between them, a recognition, a solidarity. They were survivors of the same trauma, veterans of the same war. I need to tell you something else, Melissa said, her expression growing serious. Something I found out after I left Derek. He's done this before. I'm not the first. You're not the second. Margaret felt ice form in her veins. What do you mean? After I left Derek, I did some digging, Melissa said. I found out there was another woman before me. Her name was Rachel. She was engaged to Derek 5 years ago. She also called off the wedding at the last minute. And from what I heard through the grapevine, her experience with Derek was almost identical to mine. He has a pattern, Margaret said, the pieces clicking together. Exactly, Melissa confirmed. He finds ambitious, successful women. He sweeps them off their feet with charm and attention. Then, once they're hooked, he slowly starts to tear them down and rebuild them in his image. When they get too close to the wedding, when the reality of a lifetime with him becomes undeniable, they break and run. But why? Emma asked, her voice small. Why would someone do that? Melissa shook her head. I've thought about it a lot. I think Derek genuinely doesn't understand that he's doing anything wrong. I think he actually believes he's helping us become better versions of ourselves. He was raised by Patricia, after all. He watched his father dismiss and diminish his mother for his entire childhood. This is what he thinks love looks like. That doesn't make it okay, Margaret said firmly. No, it doesn't, Melissa agreed. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to accept being hurt. That's something it took me a long time to learn. Emma wiped her eyes. Did Rachel, is she okay now? From what I heard, she's doing great, Melissa said with a small smile. She moved to another city, started her own business. She's married now, to someone who actually treats her well. She rebuilt her entire life, and it's better than it ever was. And you? Emma asked. Are you okay? Melissa's smile widened, becoming genuine and warm. I'm better than okay. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. I have a job I love, friends who support me, and I'm dating someone who thinks my loud laugh is charming, not common. Someone who encourages my career instead of trying to end it. Someone who makes me feel bigger, not smaller. Emma looked at Melissa like she was offering a glimpse of a possible future. A future where this pain led to something better. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, Melissa said, reaching across the table to squeeze Emma's hand. I know right now you're scared and hurt and probably questioning everything. But I promise you, Emma, I promise, in 6 months, in a year, you're going to look back on this moment and feel nothing but gratitude that you got out when you did. What about the Sullivans? Emma asked. What about their threats to ruin my reputation? Melissa's expression hardened. They'll try. Patricia will make her phone calls, spread her rumors. Derek will play the victim, tell everyone you broke his heart. But here's what I learned, their power is all smoke and mirrors. It feels huge and terrifying, but it only works if you give them power over you. If you hold your head high, if you keep doing good work, if you let your character speak for itself, their lies eventually crumble. What did you do? Emma asked. When they came after you? I documented everything, Melissa said. Every text message where Derek was cruel or manipulative. Every voicemail where he threatened me. Every instance where Patricia tried to sabotage my career. I didn't use it right away, I didn't need to. But I had it, just in case. And knowing I had proof of their behavior gave me confidence. It made me feel less powerless. Margaret filed that information away. Documentation. Evidence. That was smart. There's one more thing, Melissa said, pulling out a business card and sliding it across to Emma. This is my therapist. She specializes in helping people recover from emotionally manipulative relationships. She helped me tremendously. I can't tell you what to do, but if you want to talk to someone professional about what you've been through, she's incredible. Emma took the card, clutching it like a lifeline. Thank you. For all of this. For reaching out, for meeting with us, for sharing your story. You didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did, Melissa said simply. When I left Derek, I felt so alone. I thought I was crazy, that maybe I was the problem. If I'd had someone tell me that I wasn't alone, that this had happened before, that it wasn't my fault, it would have changed everything. So when I saw you last night, standing there looking exactly like I used to look, I knew I had to reach out. Nobody should have to go through this alone. Emma started crying again, but this time there was relief mixed with the pain. Relief that she wasn't crazy. Relief that she wasn't alone. Relief that there was a path forward, even if it was hard. The three women talked for another hour, sharing stories, offering support, discussing strategy for handling whatever the Sullivans would throw at Emma next. By the time they left the coffee shop, Emma looked exhausted but stronger somehow. Like she'd found something she didn't know she'd lost, her conviction that she deserved better. As they walked to the car, Emma turned to Margaret. I need to do one more thing today. I need to go to Derek's apartment and break up with him face to face. I need to say it out loud, to his face, so there's no confusion, no room for him to manipulate the narrative. Margaret's instinct was to say no, to protect Emma from Derek's inevitable manipulation. But she looked at her daughter's face and saw determination there. Saw strength. Saw the Emma who used to climb trees without fear. Okay, Margaret said. But I'm coming with you. I'll wait in the car, but I'm coming. Okay, Emma agreed. Let's go now, before I lose my nerve. They drove to Derek's apartment building in tense silence. It was one of those modern luxury buildings downtown, all glass and steel and expensive minimalism. Everything about it screamed wealth and status. Margaret parked in a visitor spot, and Emma sat for a moment, staring up at the building. You don't have to do this today, Margaret said gently. You've already sent him the text. You've already made your decision clear. I need to, Emma said. I need to look him in the eye and say the words. Otherwise, he'll find some way to convince himself, and everyone else, that this is all your fault, that I was brainwashed, that I never really wanted to leave. Margaret nodded. She understood. This was Emma reclaiming her own narrative, her own voice. I'll be right here, Margaret said. Take your phone. If anything feels wrong, if you feel unsafe in any way, you call me immediately and I'm coming up. I will, Emma promised. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and got out of the car. Margaret watched her daughter walk into the building, disappearing through the gleaming glass doors. Then she sat back in her seat and waited, her phone clutched in her hand, every nerve on edge. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Margaret's anxiety ratcheted higher with each passing minute. What was happening up there? Was Derek being cruel? Was he trying to manipulate Emma into staying? Was Emma holding strong? At 45 minutes, Margaret was reaching for her door handle, ready to go up there whether Emma wanted her to or not, when her phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Margaret answered before the first ring finished. Emma? Are you okay? I'm okay, Emma's voice came through, steady despite the tears Margaret could hear beneath it. I'm coming down now. I did it, Mom. I told him it was over. I gave him back his key. I said everything I needed to say. Relief flooded through Margaret so powerfully she felt dizzy. How did he take it? Not well, Emma admitted. He tried everything. Sweet. Angry. Apologetic. Threatening. All of it, just like Melissa said. But I held firm. I told him I wasn't the right person for him, that we wanted different things, that I needed to be free to be myself. And then I left. I'm so proud of you, Margaret said, her own voice thick with emotion. So incredibly proud. I'm coming down now. Emma paused. I just need a hug. You've got it, baby. I'm right here. A few minutes later, Emma emerged from the building. She looked wrung out, exhausted, red-eyed from crying. But she also looked lighter, like she'd set down an impossible burden. She got into the car and fell into Margaret's arms, crying into her shoulder. Margaret held her tight, stroking her hair, murmuring comforting words. It's done, Emma said when she could speak again. It's really, truly done. I'm free. You're free, Margaret repeated, and the words felt like a prayer, like a promise, like a new beginning. They sat there in the parking lot for a long time, holding each other, letting the reality of what Emma had done sink in. The engagement was over. The relationship was done. Emma had chosen herself. And whatever came next, whatever retaliation from the Sullivans, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face it together. Margaret's phone buzzed with a text message. She pulled it out and saw it was from Linda. Linda, Patricia Sullivan just called me. She's telling everyone Emma had a breakdown and called off the wedding. She's saying you brainwashed her. Just wanted you to know it's starting. Margaret showed the text to Emma, who read it and laughed, that slightly hysterical laugh that comes when something is so absurd you can't quite believe it's real. Of course she is, Emma said. Of course they're starting already. Do you think anyone will believe them? Some people will, Margaret said honestly. People who don't know you, who only know the Sullivan name and reputation. But the people who matter? Your friends, your colleagues, the people who actually know your character? They'll see through it. Emma nodded slowly. Melissa was right. They can't hurt me unless I give them power over me. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to hide or feel ashamed. I'm going to hold my head high and let my work and my character speak for themselves. That's my girl, Margaret said softly. As they drove home, Margaret felt the strangest sensation, like a chapter was ending and a new one was beginning. Not just for Emma, but for both of them. This experience had changed them both, had reminded them of what truly mattered. Love wasn't about sacrifice and compromise that left you empty. Love wasn't about becoming smaller to make someone else comfortable. Love, real love, made you bigger, braver, more fully yourself. Emma had remembered that. And in helping Emma remember, Margaret had remembered it too. Whatever the Sullivans threw at them next, they were ready. Emma finally found her voice and walked away from Derek. But do you think the Sullivans are really going to let her go that easily? What would you do if a powerful family was coming after your reputation? Would you fight back or try to lay low? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Act 3 is where everything Margaret and Emma have been through leads to a confrontation nobody saw coming, and a revelation that changes everything. The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Patricia Sullivan launched her campaign with surgical precision. Margaret watched it unfold like a carefully orchestrated attack, each strike calculated to cause maximum damage. First came the phone calls. Margaret's phone rang constantly, clients, colleagues, distant relatives, all calling to ask if Emma was okay, in a tone that implied she clearly wasn't. The subtext was always the same. Had Emma really had some kind of breakdown? Was Margaret getting her help? Wasn't it so sad when young women cracked under pressure? Emma's workplace was hit even harder. Rumors circulated that Emma had become unstable, that she'd embarrassed herself at her own engagement party, that she'd thrown away her future because of mommy issues. 2 clients specifically requested to work with other team members. Emma's boss called her in for a concerned conversation about her mental state. Social media was worse. Someone, Margaret suspected it was one of Derek's friends, had recorded part of the engagement party confrontation and posted it online with the caption, "Crazy mom ruins daughter's engagement party. Feel bad for the guy." The video was edited, of course, showing only Margaret's initial interruption and Emma's tears, none of Derek's condescending speech that had prompted it. The comments were brutal. Strangers who knew nothing about the situation felt entitled to weigh in. Half called Margaret a controlling narcissist. The other half called Emma a weakling for not standing up to her mother. Nobody seemed to consider that maybe, just maybe, Margaret had good reason to interrupt. Emma tried to stay strong, but Margaret could see it wearing on her. The 3rd morning after the breakup, Margaret found Emma sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop screen with tears streaming silently down her face. "What is it?" Margaret asked, moving to sit beside her. Emma turned the laptop so Margaret could see. It was an email from Derek's lawyer. A cease and desist letter demanding that Emma stop spreading false and defamatory statements about Derek Sullivan and the Sullivan family, and threatening legal action if she continued. "I haven't said anything to anyone," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I've barely left the house. I certainly haven't been spreading rumors about them. They're lying. They're literally making things up to threaten me." Margaret read through the letter, her blood boiling with each word. It was classic intimidation, vague enough to be legally defenseless but specific enough to be terrifying. It mentioned multiple witnesses who'd heard Emma make disparaging remarks about Derek's character. It referenced potential lawsuits for slander and emotional distress. It painted Emma as vindictive and unstable. "This is meant to scare you into silence," Margaret said, keeping her voice calm despite her fury. "They want you too afraid to tell anyone the truth about Derek." "It's working," Emma admitted. "Mom, I'm scared. What if they really sue me? I can't afford a lawyer. I could lose everything." Margaret set down the letter and took Emma's hands in hers. "Listen to me. This letter is all bark, no bite. If they actually had witnesses hearing you say defamatory things, they'd name them. If they actually intended to sue, they'd have already filed papers. This is a scare tactic. Nothing more." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen this before," Margaret said, thinking of James Worthington's family and their similar threats 25 years ago. Rich, powerful families love to threaten lawsuits. They rarely follow through because actual litigation means depositions, evidence, discovery. It means Derek having to testify under oath about your relationship. It means their dirty laundry getting aired in public court records. They don't want that. They just want you scared enough to stay quiet. Emma looked uncertain, wanting to believe but afraid to hope. We need to fight back, Margaret said, a plan forming in her mind. Not with lawsuits or threats. With the truth. What do you mean? Margaret stood up, pacing the kitchen as ideas crystallized. Melissa said she documented everything from her relationship with Derek. We should do the same. Go through your phone, your emails, everything. Find every text where Derek was controlling or cruel. Every voicemail where he manipulated you. Every instance where he made you feel small. Document it all. What good will that do? Right now? Maybe nothing, Margaret admitted. But if the Sullivans escalate, if they actually do try to sue you or spread more vicious lies, you'll have proof. You'll have evidence of Derek's real character. And trust me, nothing scares people like the Sullivans more than the threat of their precious reputation being tarnished with actual evidence. Emma nodded slowly, some of the fear leaving her face, replaced by determination. Okay. Okay, I can do that. Good. And Emma? I want you to call that therapist Melissa recommended. Today. You need someone professional to help you process all of this. I will, Emma promised. But Mom? What about you? You've been so strong through all of this, taking care of me, but I know this is affecting you too. The things people are saying about you. Don't worry about me, Margaret cut her off gently. I've survived worse than Patricia Sullivan's rumor mill. What matters is that you heal. That you come out of this remembering who you are. Emma hugged Margaret tightly. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out eventually, Margaret said. You're stronger than you think. You always have been. After Emma went upstairs to start documenting everything from her relationship with Derek, Margaret sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the cease and desist letter. Patricia Sullivan had made a critical mistake. She'd assumed Margaret was like everyone else they'd bullied over the years, that threats and intimidation would make her back down, make her tell Emma to apologize and go back to Derek just to make the pain stop. But Margaret had learned a long time ago that backing down only made bullies stronger. Sometimes, the only way to win was to fight back harder. Margaret pulled out her phone and called Linda. Hey, Linda answered immediately. How's Emma holding up? She's struggling but surviving, Margaret said. Listen, I need your help. You know everyone in this city, all the charity boards, social circles, business connections. I need to know everything you can find out about the Sullivan family. Not just what they want everyone to know. The real story. The scandals they've buried. The skeletons in their closet. Linda was quiet for a moment. Maggie, are you sure you want to go there? Digging into the Sullivans could make things worse. They're already trying to destroy Emma's reputation, Margaret said flatly. They've already sent legal threats. It can't get much worse. But if we have information, real, factual information about who the Sullivans really are, we have leverage. We have protection. Okay, Linda said, and Margaret could hear the resolve in her sister's voice. Okay, I'll make some calls. Give me a couple of days. Thank you. Maggie? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Emma's lucky to have you. Margaret hung up feeling more centered than she had in days. She wasn't going to just sit back and let the Sullivans crush her daughter. If they wanted a fight, she'd give them one. Her phone rang again. A number she didn't recognize. Margaret almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Chen? This is Rachel Morrison. I think Melissa Richardson might have mentioned me. Margaret sat up straighter. Derek's other ex-fiancé? That's me, Rachel said, and there was wry humor in her voice. Melissa told me what's happening with your daughter. I wanted to reach out. I have some information I think you should know. What kind of information? The kind that could stop the Sullivans in their tracks if they pushed too hard, Rachel said. Can we meet? They met that afternoon at a restaurant across town. Rachel was a striking woman in her late 30s with dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She carried a folder when she arrived, setting it on the table between them with a significant look. "What's in there?" Margaret asked. "Insurance," Rachel said simply. "When I left Derek 5 years ago, Patricia Sullivan came after me exactly like she's coming after your daughter. Threats, rumors, intimidation. She tried to get me fired from my job. She called my family members and told them I was having a mental breakdown. She spread lies about me all over the city." "That's exactly what she's doing to Emma," Margaret said, anger rising again. "I know. That's why I'm here." Rachel opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "I'm a journalist. Or at least I was, before I took a job in corporate communications. But I still have my investigative instincts. When Patricia came after me, I started digging. And I found some very interesting things about the Sullivan family." Margaret leaned forward, studying the documents Rachel spread across the table. "This," Rachel pointed to a financial document, "shows that Richard Sullivan's company is in much worse financial shape than they want anyone to know. They're over-leveraged, bleeding money, barely holding on. The whole wealthy family image? It's mostly smoke and mirrors at this point." "How did you get this?" Margaret asked. "Public financial filings, if you know where to look," Rachel said with a small smile. "It's all legal and above board. Just not information they advertise." She pointed to another document. "And this is a police report from 3 years ago. Derek's younger brother, Marcus, was arrested for assault at a bar. The charges were dropped, the Sullivan lawyers made sure of that, but the report still exists. It shows a pattern of violence in the family that they've worked very hard to cover up." Margaret felt pieces clicking together. "You're saying the Sullivans aren't as powerful as they pretend to be?" "Exactly," Rachel confirmed. "Their power is all reputation and intimidation. But their reputation is built on lies and cover-ups. And intimidation only works if people are too afraid to call their bluff. Why didn't you use this information when Patricia came after you?" Rachel's expression grew complicated. "Honestly, I was tired. I just wanted to be free of them. So I moved to another city, started over, and tried to forget the whole thing. But I've always regretted not fighting back. Not standing up to them. When Melissa told me about your daughter, about how you stood up at that engagement party and refused to stay silent, I realized I could help. I could give you the ammunition to fight back if you need it." "Rachel, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," Rachel interrupted. "Use it. If the Sullivans keep pushing, if they try to destroy Emma's life the way they tried to destroy mine, you use this information. You let them know that their secrets aren't as secret as they think. That their threats can go both ways." Margaret carefully gathered the documents, feeling like she'd just been handed a weapon. "Does Derek know you have all this?" "No. And I'd like to keep it that way until it's necessary." Rachel paused. "But Mrs. Chen? I hope you don't have to use any of this. I hope the Sullivans see that Emma isn't coming back and they just move on. Sometimes bullies back down when they realize their victim isn't afraid of them anymore. And if they don't back down?" Rachel's smile was sharp. "Then you show them exactly why they should have." After Rachel left, Margaret sat in her car in the parking lot, staring at the folder. She'd never been the kind of person to fight dirty. She'd always believed in taking the high road, in letting her character and integrity speak for themselves. But she also believed in protecting her daughter at any cost. If the Sullivans forced her hand, she wouldn't hesitate to use this information. Emma's well-being mattered more than Margaret's principles about fighting fair. Margaret drove home to find Emma sitting on the couch with her laptop, looking slightly shell-shocked. "What happened?" Margaret asked immediately. "I went through everything like you said," Emma said slowly. "Every text, every email, every voicemail from Derek over the past year. Mom, it's so much worse than I remembered. When I read it all together, when I see the pattern. I can't believe I didn't see it before." "You saw what you wanted to see," Margaret said gently. "That's not weakness. That's hope. That's love." Derek took advantage of that. There's more, Emma said. While I was going through my email, I found something weird. Derek had asked me to add him to my cloud storage account a few months ago. He said it was so we could share wedding planning documents. But I checked the access logs, and he's been looking at my files. My personal files. Work documents. Private photos. Everything. Margaret felt cold dread settle in her stomach. He was spying on you. I changed all my passwords and removed his access, Emma said quickly. But Mom, what if he downloaded things? What if he has copies of my work files or personal information? That's illegal, Margaret said firmly. That's an actual crime. If he uses anything he accessed without your permission, he's committed theft and potentially corporate espionage. Emma's eyes widened. Should I report it? Document it first, Margaret advised. Screenshot the access logs showing when he logged in and what he viewed. Save everything. Then we'll decide next steps. Emma nodded, turning back to her laptop with new determination. Margaret watched her daughter working, seeing the strength returning to Emma's shoulders, the focus in her eyes. This was the Emma she knew. Strong. Capable. Not willing to be a victim. Margaret's phone buzzed. A text from Linda, found something big. Calling in 5 minutes. When Linda called, her voice was charged with excitement. Maggie, you're not going to believe this. I talked to Caroline Winters, you know, she's on the board of that children's hospital with Patricia Sullivan. I know Caroline, Margaret said. What did she tell you? Patricia Sullivan has been embezzling from the hospital foundation, Linda said, her voice dropping to a whisper as if someone might overhear. Not huge amounts, but steady. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Caroline's been noticing discrepancies in the books for months, but she's been too afraid to say anything because Patricia is so well connected. Margaret's mind raced. Does she have proof? Financial records. She's been quietly documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to bring it to the board. But Maggie, if this comes out, it'll destroy Patricia's reputation. She could face criminal charges. Does Patricia know Caroline suspects anything? I don't think so. Caroline's been very careful. Margaret thought about the folder Rachel had given her, now combined with this new information. The Sullivans had a lot more to lose than anyone realized. They weren't the untouchable dynasty they pretended to be. They were barely hanging on, their power sustained only by reputation and fear. Linda, thank Caroline for me. And tell her to keep documenting everything. If the Sullivans come after Emma any harder, we might need that information. You're really going to take them on? Linda sounded worried but also impressed. Only if I have to, Margaret said. But if they force my hand, I'm not going to hold back. That evening, Margaret and Emma sat together in the living room, Emma's engagement ring still sitting on the coffee table where she'd left it days ago. It caught the lamplight, beautiful and cold. What should I do with it? Emma asked, nodding toward the ring. Mail it back to Derek, Margaret suggested. Certified mail with a signature required. That way there's documentation that you returned it, no question. Emma picked up the ring, holding it in her palm. I thought I'd be sadder about this. About the end of the relationship, the cancelled wedding, all of it. But mostly I just feel relieved. That tells you everything you need to know, Margaret said softly. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face paled. It's Derek. He's outside. He's texting that he's parked in front of the house and wants to talk. Margaret stood up immediately, protective instincts flaring. You don't have to see him. You don't owe him anything. I know, Emma said, but she was already standing, moving toward the window. She peeked through the curtains and saw Derek's expensive car parked at the curb. But maybe I should talk to him. Maybe if I explain one more time, face to face, he'll finally accept it's over. Emma, no, Margaret said firmly. He's already shown he doesn't respect your boundaries. Showing up at your mother's house uninvited is proof of that. You don't reward that behavior by giving him what he wants. Even as Margaret spoke, her doorbell rang. Then rang again. Then Derek started knocking, hard enough that the door rattled in its frame. Emma. Derek's voice came through the door, loud and demanding. Emma, I know you're in there. Just talk to me. 5 minutes, that's all I need. Emma looked torn, caught between her natural kindness and her growing understanding that Derek didn't deserve that kindness. Margaret made the decision for both of them. She pulled out her phone and started recording video. Derek Sullivan, she called through the door, her voice clear and firm. Emma has made it clear multiple times that your relationship is over. You are not welcome here. You need to leave immediately or I will call the police. This is between Emma and me. Derek shouted back. Stop interfering. Emma is an adult who has made her own decision. She doesn't want to see you. Leave. Now. There was silence for a moment. Then Derek's fist hit the door, hard. You did this. You poisoned her against me. You ruined everything. Margaret kept recording. This was perfect documentation of Derek's true character, aggressive, entitled, unable to accept rejection. I'm calling the police, Margaret said calmly. You have 30 seconds to get off my property. Emma, please. Derek's voice shifted, becoming pleading. Please, just talk to me. I love you. I just want to understand. What did I do wrong? Tell me and I'll fix it. I'll change. Just give me another chance. Emma's resolve seemed to waver. Margaret saw her take a step toward the door and quickly grabbed her arm. No. This is manipulation. He's cycling through anger and desperation trying to find what works. But what if he really will change? Emma whispered. What if I'm giving up too soon? Emma, look at me, Margaret said urgently. The Derek who's pounding on our door right now, refusing to respect your clearly stated boundaries, threatening and pleading in the same breath, this is the real Derek. This is who he becomes when he doesn't get what he wants. Do you want to marry this person? Emma stared at the door, where Derek had started knocking again, calling her name over and over. Margaret saw the moment reality truly crystallized for her daughter. Saw the moment Emma finally, fully understood that Derek's love wasn't love at all, it was possession. Control. Entitlement. No, Emma said quietly. Then louder, walking to the door, no. Derek, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. It's over. Please leave. You don't mean that, Derek said. Your mother is standing right there, isn't she? She's making you say this. Just come outside. Come talk to me alone for 5 minutes without her poisoning your mind. My mother isn't making me do anything. Emma's voice rose, strong and clear. I'm making my own choice. And I choose to not be with you. I choose to not spend my life becoming smaller to fit into your expectations. I choose myself, Derek. And that means choosing to never see you again. The silence that followed was profound. Margaret could picture Derek on the other side of the door, shock replacing anger on his face. He'd probably never been rejected quite so definitively before. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. You're making a huge mistake, Emma. You and your mother both. My family doesn't forget things like this. Is that a threat? Margaret called out, still recording. It's a promise, Derek said. You humiliated me. You humiliated my family. There will be consequences. I'm calling the police now, Margaret said. She dialed 911, putting the call on speaker so Derek could hear. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my home refusing to leave after being asked repeatedly, Margaret said calmly. He's making threats and acting aggressive. Derek must have heard, because suddenly there was silence. Then the sound of footsteps retreating. A car door slamming. An engine starting. By the time the 911 dispatcher asked for more details, Derek's car was pulling away from the curb. Margaret gave the dispatcher the full story anyway, creating an official police report. Documentation. Evidence. Everything carefully recorded in case they needed it later. After hanging up, Margaret and Emma stood in the quiet hallway, adrenaline slowly fading. "I'm shaking," Emma said, holding up her trembling hands. "That's normal," Margaret said. "You just stood up to someone who's been controlling you for a year. That takes enormous courage." "I almost gave in," Emma admitted. "When he started sounding desperate and sad, I almost opened the door." "How pathetic is that?" "It's not pathetic. It's human. You have a good heart, Emma. Derek counted on that. He counted on you being too kind, too understanding, too willing to give him one more chance." Margaret pulled Emma into a hug. "But you didn't. You stood strong. And he finally heard you." Emma hugged her mother tightly. "What did he mean about consequences? What do you think he'll do?" Margaret thought about the folder from Rachel, the information from Linda, all the ammunition she'd gathered. "Whatever he tries, we'll be ready." What Derek tried was breathtaking in its viciousness. The next morning, Emma woke to find her company's HR department had received an anonymous email claiming Emma had been stealing client information and sharing it with competitors. The email included what looked like proof, screenshots of files and emails that appeared to show Emma engaged in corporate espionage. Emma was immediately placed on administrative leave pending investigation. "It's all fake," Emma said, her voice shaking with anger as she showed Margaret the supposed evidence. "These screenshots are doctored. That's not my email address, it's close, but one letter is different. And these files? I've never seen them before in my life." "Derek," Margaret said flatly. "He had access to your cloud storage. He could have figured out enough about your work to create convincing forgeries." "He's trying to get me fired," Emma said, tears of fury in her eyes. "He's trying to destroy my career because I rejected him." Margaret looked at her daughter, saw the devastation, the betrayal, the hurt, and felt something inside her snap. Enough. They'd been playing defense, trying to survive the Sullivans' attacks. It was time to go on offense. "Get me all the evidence you have of Derek's unauthorized access to your accounts," Margaret said, her voice calm but lethal. "Screenshots, access logs, everything. We're going to his company's legal department." "What? Why?" "Because what Derek did, accessing your accounts without permission, using that access to create false evidence against you, that's illegal. If his employers know he's engaged in potential corporate espionage and identity fraud, they'll have to act. It's a liability issue for them." Emma's eyes widened. "You think they'll fire him?" "At minimum, they'll have to investigate. And during that investigation, all of Derek's behavior will come under scrutiny. Trust me, when a company's legal department gets involved, people get very careful very fast." They spent the morning compiling everything. Emma's documentation of Derek's account access. Margaret's video of Derek threatening them outside the house. The police report from that incident. Rachel's information about the Sullivan family's hidden problems. Linda's information about Patricia's embezzlement. It was a comprehensive dossier of the Sullivans' misconduct, their lies, their manipulation. "We're not going to use all of this unless we have to," Margaret explained. "But we're going to let the Sullivans know we have it. We're going to make them understand that if they keep pushing, if they keep trying to destroy Emma, we will push back harder. And they have a lot more to lose than we do." Margaret sent an email to Derek's company, carefully worded, outlining Derek's unauthorized access to Emma's accounts and attaching proof. She CC'd their legal department and HR. Within an hour, she got a response requesting a meeting. That afternoon, Margaret and Emma sat in a conference room at Derek's firm, facing three very serious-looking lawyers and an HR director. They listened as Margaret explained everything, showed them the evidence, demonstrated exactly how Derek had violated both privacy laws and company policy. "We take these allegations very seriously," one of the lawyers said, his expression grim. Mr. Sullivan will be placed on immediate leave pending investigation. And Ms. Chen, we will be contacting your employer to inform them that the evidence they received appears to have been fabricated using illegally obtained information. Emma sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank us, the HR director said. If what you're saying is true, and the evidence certainly suggests it is, Mr. Sullivan has put this company at serious legal risk. We have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. As Margaret and Emma left the building, Emma looked lighter than she had in days. Do you think they'll really fire him? I think his career at that firm is over, Margaret said. Even if they don't officially fire him, his reputation there is destroyed. He'll have to resign. Emma was quiet for a moment. I should feel bad about that. About ruining his career. But I don't. Is that wrong? No, Margaret said firmly. You didn't ruin his career. He did that himself when he chose to break the law to hurt you. You just made sure he faced consequences for his actions. That evening, Margaret's phone rang. Patricia Sullivan's name flashed on the screen. Margaret answered, putting it on speaker so Emma could hear. Mrs. Chen. Patricia's voice was icy. I think we need to talk. I'm listening, Margaret said calmly. You've caused quite a bit of trouble for my family, Patricia said. Derek has been suspended from his job. We've had questions about our family finances. Someone has been spreading vicious rumors about me and the charities I'm involved with. I assume you're behind all of this. I haven't spread any rumors, Margaret said truthfully. I've simply documented facts and shared them with appropriate parties when your family tried to destroy my daughter's reputation and career. I want this to stop, Patricia said. Whatever you think you know about my family, whatever evidence you think you have. I don't think I have evidence, Margaret interrupted. I know I have evidence. Evidence of Derek's illegal access to Emma's accounts. Evidence of your son showing up at my home and making threats. Evidence of the fabricated corporate espionage claims. And yes, evidence of certain financial irregularities involving charitable foundations. The silence on the other end was profound. What do you want? Patricia finally asked, and for the first time, Margaret heard fear beneath the ice. I want you to leave Emma alone, Margaret said simply. Stop the rumors. Stop the threats. Stop trying to destroy her career or her reputation. Derek made his choices. Emma made hers. It's over. Accept it and move on. And if we do? You'll keep quiet about everything else? I have no interest in your family's dirty laundry, Margaret said. I never did. But if you continue to come after my daughter, I won't hesitate to make sure everyone knows exactly who the Sullivans really are. Every secret. Every lie. Every crime. All of it. Another long silence. Then, fine. We'll leave Emma alone. But Mrs. Chen? You've made a powerful enemy today. No, Margaret corrected. You made an enemy the day you raised your son to think women are possessions he can control. The day you taught him that power means you can hurt people without consequences. I'm just the one who finally said no. Margaret hung up before Patricia could respond. Emma stared at her mother with something like awe. Mom, that was, wow. It needed to be said, Margaret replied, feeling suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation was fading, leaving her drained. Do you think they'll really leave me alone now? I think they will, Margaret said. Because they know we're not afraid of them anymore. And bullies always back down when their victims refuse to be bullied. Over the next week, the change was remarkable. The rumors about Emma dried up. The whispers stopped. Emma's company completed their investigation and not only cleared her completely but apologized for the stress they'd caused. Derek quietly resigned from his job. The Sullivans made no further attempts to contact Emma or spread lies about her. It was like a switch had flipped. Once the Sullivans realized they couldn't intimidate or destroy Emma, they simply gave up. Moved on. Started focusing their energy elsewhere. Emma slowly began to reclaim her life. She went back to work. Reconnected with friends she'd been neglecting. Started therapy with the counselor Melissa had recommended. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to remember who she was before Derek. One evening, 3 weeks after the breakup, Emma and Margaret sat together on the porch watching the sunset. Emma looked more like herself than she had in months. Her laughter was genuine, her smile reached her eyes, her whole posture was relaxed. "I talked to Melissa today," Emma said. "She invited me to a support group she runs for women recovering from emotionally abusive relationships." "Are you going to go?" Margaret asked. "I think so. It might help to talk to other women who've been through similar things. To know I'm not alone." Emma paused. "Melissa also told me something interesting. She said Derek's engaged again. Already. To someone new." Margaret felt a flash of concern for this unknown woman walking into the same trap Emma had escaped. "I know what you're thinking," Emma said. "I thought it too." But Melissa reached out to her, sent her an anonymous message sharing information about Derek's past, about the pattern. She wanted to warn her the way she wished someone had warned us. That was brave of Melissa. It was. I don't know if the new woman will listen. Sometimes people have to learn the hard way. But at least she has the information now. The choice is hers. Emma looked at Margaret. "You know what I learned from all of this?" "What?" "That the people who love you, really love you, they make you feel bigger, not smaller. They celebrate your successes instead of minimizing them. They encourage your dreams instead of talking you out of them. They stand beside you as an equal, not above you as a superior." Emma took Margaret's hand. "You showed me what real love looks like, Mom. You risked everything, our relationship, your reputation, your peace, because you loved me enough to tell me a truth I didn't want to hear. That's real love." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. "You would have figured it out eventually. You're strong, baby. You always have been." "Maybe. But you made sure I figured it out before I married him. Before I legally tied myself to someone who would have spent our entire marriage slowly erasing who I am." Emma squeezed Margaret's hand. "You saved me, Mom. And I'll never forget that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. Margaret thought about the past few weeks, the fear, the fights, the uncertainty. She thought about Emma's journey from lost to found, from small to strong. "Mom?" Emma said quietly. "Do you think I'll ever trust someone again? Ever fall in love without being terrified they'll turn out like Derek?" "Yes," Margaret said with certainty. "Because you know what red flags look like now. You know what real love feels like and what manipulation disguised as love feels like. You have wisdom you didn't have before. And that wisdom will protect you." "How long did it take you?" Emma asked. "After my father left? How long before you could trust someone again?" Margaret considered the question. "Honestly, I never really dated seriously again. I was so focused on raising you, building my business, creating a life for us. And I told myself I was too busy, too focused, too independent to need a partner." She paused. "But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of making the same mistake. Afraid of letting someone hurt you the way James hurt us." "Mom, that's so sad." "Is it?" Margaret smiled. "I don't think so. I had you. I had my work. I had a full, rich life. Could it have been fuller with the right partner? Maybe. But I don't regret the choices I made. Every choice led me here, to this moment, with you safe and strong and free." Emma leaned her head on Margaret's shoulder. "I want you to be happy too, you know. It's not too late. You could still date. Find someone who makes you feel bigger." "Maybe," Margaret said, though she wasn't convinced. "Right now, I'm just happy you're okay. That's enough for me." Her phone buzzed with a text. "Linda, Caroline's going to the board about Patricia's embezzlement tomorrow. Thought you should know. The Sullivan empire is about to crumble. Margaret showed the text to Emma, who read it and sighed. Part of me feels bad for them. Is that weird? No, Margaret said. It means you have empathy. That you're not cruel, even to people who were cruel to you. That's a good thing, Emma. Don't lose that. But they deserve it, right? They deserve to face consequences? Yes, Margaret said firmly. They absolutely do. Not because we want revenge, but because powerful people need to understand they can't abuse that power without consequences. If Patricia gets away with embezzling from a children's charity, she'll keep doing it. If Derek never faces repercussions for his manipulation and illegal behavior, he'll keep hurting women. Sometimes consequences are how people learn. Or at least, how they're stopped from hurting others. Emma nodded slowly, processing this. I hope Derek's new fiancée listens to Melissa's warning. I hope she gets out before it's too late. Me too, baby. Me too. 6 months later. Emma stood in front of her closet, staring at the rack of clothes with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Tonight was her company's annual awards dinner, and she'd been nominated for Marketer of the Year. After everything she'd been through, after nearly losing her job to Derek's fabricated accusations, she'd not only survived, she'd thrived. The Waverly account she'd saved had led to 3 more major clients. Her innovative campaign strategies had been featured in 2 industry publications. Her boss had promoted her to senior account manager with a substantial raise. Emma Chen was no longer just surviving. She was succeeding on her own terms. She pulled out a dress, bright red, bold, the one Derek had once made her change out of because it was too attention-seeking. Emma held it up and smiled. Perfect. Margaret knocked on the bedroom door. Can I come in? Yeah, of course. Emma turned to see her mother dressed elegantly in a deep blue dress. Mom, you look amazing. So will you, Margaret said, gesturing to the red dress. Is that the one Derek hated? The very same, Emma confirmed with a grin. I'm reclaiming it. Good for you. Margaret sat on the edge of Emma's bed, watching her daughter with obvious pride. Are you nervous about tonight? A little, Emma admitted. It's the first big industry event since everything. I'm sure there will be people there who heard the Sullivans' version of events. People who might still believe their lies. And if there are? Then they'll see me holding my head high, doing amazing work, and living my best life, Emma said with more confidence than she felt. Because that's the best revenge, right? Success? It's not about revenge, Margaret corrected gently. It's about truth. The truth is that you're talented and hardworking and deserving of every success you achieve. Anyone who believes otherwise doesn't matter. Emma zipped up the red dress and turned to look at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked strong, confident, vibrant. She looked like herself again. The real Emma, not Derek's carefully molded version. I like what I see, Emma said softly. For the first time in a long time, I actually like what I see. Margaret came to stand beside her, both of them reflected in the mirror together. I'm so proud of you. Not just for your career success, but for the work you've been doing on yourself. The therapy, the support group, the way you've rebuilt your life, it's been incredible to watch. I couldn't have done it without you, Emma said, turning to hug her mother. Literally. If you hadn't spoken up that night at the engagement party, I don't know where I'd be right now. Married to Derek, probably. Miserable. Lost. You would have found your way eventually, Margaret said, but Emma shook her head. No. I don't think I would have. I was too far gone. Too convinced that his way was the right way. You saved me, Mom. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. They held each other for a moment, both blinking back tears, neither wanting to ruin their makeup. Come on, Margaret said finally, pulling back with a watery smile. Let's go show the world who Emma Chen really is. The awards dinner was held at one of the city's most prestigious hotels. The ballroom was filled with the city's marketing and advertising elite, all dressed in their finest, networking and celebrating. Emma walked in with Margaret beside her, and she felt a moment of panic when several heads turned their way. But then she saw Sarah, her colleague and friend, waving enthusiastically from across the room. She saw Marcus from the creative department giving her a thumbs up. She saw her boss, Patricia, no relation to Patricia Sullivan, thankfully, smiling and gesturing for her to come over. "See?" Margaret whispered. "The people who matter are glad to see you." Emma made the rounds, accepting congratulations on her nomination, chatting about projects and campaigns. A few people were noticeably cool to her, people she recognized as part of the Sullivan social circle, but most everyone was warm and welcoming. Halfway through the cocktail hour, Emma found herself face to face with Constance Sullivan, Derek's aunt, the one who'd cornered her at the engagement party talking about proper wedding etiquette. "Emma," Constance said coolly. "I'm surprised to see you here." Emma felt her stomach clench but forced herself to smile politely. "Why would you be surprised? I work in marketing. This is an industry event." "Yes, well, after everything that happened with Derek, I assumed you'd keep a lower profile. The scandal and all." There it was. The Sullivan narrative, still being pushed 6 months later. "There was no scandal," Emma said firmly, her voice steady. "There was me choosing to end a relationship that wasn't healthy. That's not scandalous. That's smart." Constance's expression soured. "Derek is devastated, you know. You broke his heart." "Did I?" Emma asked, and she was surprised by how little she cared about the answer. "Because I heard he's already engaged to someone else." That was fast for someone who was supposedly devastated. "That's different." "It's not different," Emma interrupted, feeling her confidence growing. "Derek moves from one woman to another, trying to find someone who'll be exactly what he wants. The problem is, what he wants is a possession, not a partner. I wasn't willing to be that. And I hope his new fiancée isn't either, for her sake." Constance drew herself up indignantly. "How dare you speak about my nephew that way?" "Constance." A new voice cut in. Margaret had appeared at Emma's elbow, her expression polite but dangerous. "I think this conversation is over. Emma has been nothing but gracious to you, despite your family's attempts to destroy her reputation and career. I suggest you walk away before I feel compelled to share some interesting information about your family's recent legal troubles." Constance's face went pale. The news about Patricia's embezzlement had broken 3 months ago, leading to her resignation from multiple charity boards and ongoing investigation. The Sullivan family's reputation had taken a serious hit. "This isn't over," Constance said, but it sounded weak. "Actually," Emma said calmly, "it is. Your family doesn't have power over me anymore. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not ashamed of my choices. And I'm certainly not going to let you ruin my evening. So if you'll excuse me, I have an award to potentially win." Emma turned and walked away, Margaret beside her, and she heard Constance sputter behind them. But she didn't look back. Didn't give the Sullivans one more moment of her attention or energy. "That was perfect," Margaret said, squeezing Emma's hand. "Absolutely perfect." Emma felt like she was floating. She just stood up to a Sullivan. Hadn't crumbled. Hadn't apologized. Hadn't let them make her feel small. She'd been strong, confident, clear about her boundaries. She'd been herself. When they announced the Marketer of the Year award, Emma's heart was pounding. She knew she'd done good work, but there were so many talented people nominated. She didn't really expect. And the winner is Emma Chen. The applause was deafening. Emma stood up, shocked, as people around her congratulated her. She walked to the stage in a daze, accepted the award, and stood at the podium looking out at the crowd. She was supposed to give a speech. She'd prepared something, thanking her team, her boss, her clients. But standing there, holding this award, representing everything she'd fought for and reclaimed over the past 6 months, different words came out. 6 months ago, Emma heard herself say, "I almost gave up on myself. I almost let someone else define who I was and what I was worth. I almost became a smaller, quieter, more appropriate version of myself because I thought that's what I needed to do to be loved." The room had gone quiet. People were leaning forward, listening intently. "But someone who loved me, really loved me, wouldn't let me disappear," Emma continued, her eyes finding Margaret in the crowd. "My mother stood up at what should have been a celebration and told a truth nobody wanted to hear. She risked our relationship, her reputation, everything, because she knew I was losing myself and she refused to watch it happen." Margaret was crying openly now, and Emma felt her own tears starting. This award, Emma held it up, represents more than just good marketing work. It represents what happens when you choose yourself. When you decide your own worth isn't up for debate. When you surround yourself with people who make you bigger, not smaller. She looked directly at where Constance Sullivan was sitting, stone-faced and rigid. To anyone out there who's struggling with a relationship that makes you feel less than you are, whether it's romantic, familial, professional, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve to be celebrated for who you are, not criticized for who you're not. You deserve love that lifts you up, not tears you down. And you deserve people in your life who will tell you hard truths when you need to hear them, even when it's uncomfortable. The applause started then, building to a standing ovation. Emma saw her colleagues on their feet, saw strangers wiping away tears, saw Margaret standing and clapping with pride radiating from every pore. But more than that, Emma saw Melissa Richardson near the back of the room, also standing and applauding. She'd come. And beside her was another woman Emma didn't recognize, Rachel Morrison, she realized. Derek's other ex. They'd both come to support her. Emma felt surrounded by strength, by solidarity, by women who'd survived and thrived. She finished her speech, thanked everyone properly, and walked off stage to hugs and congratulations. But the person she went to first was Margaret. "Thank you," Emma said, holding her mother tight. "Thank you for loving me enough to tell me the truth. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." "Always," Margaret whispered. "Always, baby." Later that night, after the dinner ended and the crowd dispersed, Emma found herself in the hotel lobby with Margaret, Melissa, and Rachel. 4 women, bonded by their experiences with the Sullivan family, celebrating their freedom and success. "We should make this a regular thing," Melissa suggested. "A support group for survivors of the Sullivans." They all laughed, but there was truth in the joke. "Seriously though," Rachel said, "I'm glad we're all here. When I left Derek 5 years ago, I felt so alone. If I'd had this community, this understanding, it would have made everything so much easier. That's why we started the support group," Melissa said. "So other women don't have to feel alone the way we did." Emma looked at these women, strangers 6 months ago, now friends and allies. "Can I ask you something? Do you ever regret it? Walking away from the Sullivans? Despite all the pain they caused, do you ever wonder what if?" Melissa and Rachel exchanged glances, then both shook their heads. "Never," Melissa said firmly. "Not once. My life now is 1,000 times better than anything it would have been with Derek." "Same," Rachel agreed. "I'm happily married now to someone who actually loves me, the real me. Someone who encourages my ambitions instead of trying to squash them. When I think about what my life would have been if I'd married Derek." She shuddered. "I dodged a bullet. We all did." "To dodging bullets," Emma said, raising her water glass. "To mothers who refuse to stay silent," Melissa added, nodding at Margaret. "To women who save each other," Rachel contributed. "To choosing ourselves," Margaret finished. They clinked glasses, 4 women at different stages of healing, all connected by their courage to say no, to walk away, to choose themselves over the comfortable lie of a destructive relationship. 3 months later, Emma sat in her therapist's office, feeling more settled than she had in months. Dr. Sarah Martinez had become an important part of Emma's healing journey, helping her process the trauma of her relationship with Derek and rebuild her sense of self-worth. "You seem different today," Dr. Martinez observed. "What's changed?" Emma thought about it. "I think I've finally forgiven myself." "For what?" "For not seeing who Derek really was sooner. For letting him change me. For almost marrying him." Emma paused. "I've been carrying around this shame, this feeling that I should have known better, should have been stronger, should have seen the red flags. And now? Now I understand that manipulation works because it's gradual and subtle. That strong, smart, capable women can find themselves in these situations because that's how abusers operate. They don't show you who they really are all at once. They reveal it slowly, after they've already gotten you invested in the relationship." Emma smiled slightly. "I'm not stupid or weak for not seeing it. I'm human." Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's significant growth, Emma. How does it feel?" "Freeing," Emma said honestly. "For the first time since all this happened, I feel ready to move forward instead of just surviving." "What does moving forward look like to you?" Emma had been thinking about this a lot. "I want to use my experience to help others. I've been talking with Melissa about expanding the support group. Maybe starting a foundation to help women escape emotionally abusive relationships. I have the marketing skills to raise awareness. Melissa has the organizational experience. Between us, we could really make a difference." "That sounds wonderful," Dr. Martinez said. "What does your mother think?" "She loves the idea. She's already offered to help with fundraising and business planning." Emma laughed. "She's also been gently suggesting I might want to think about dating again, but I'm not quite there yet." "That's okay. There's no timeline for healing. You'll know when you're ready." Emma nodded. "Right now, I'm just focused on being happy being Emma. Just Emma. Not Emma trying to please Derek. Not Emma recovering from Derek. Just Emma." "And how is just Emma doing?" "Really well," Emma said, and she meant it. Really, really well. 1 year after the engagement party. Margaret stood in her kitchen making coffee, the early morning sun streaming through the windows. It was Saturday, her favorite day of the week, the day Emma usually came over for brunch. The past year had been transformative, not just for Emma, but for Margaret too. Watching her daughter heal and grow had reminded Margaret of her own strength, her own worth. She'd started therapy herself, working through old wounds from James's abandonment, examining patterns in her life that had kept her closed off from romantic connection. She wasn't dating anyone. She wasn't sure if she ever would again. But she was open to the possibility in a way she hadn't been before. And that felt like growth. The doorbell rang just as the coffee finished brewing. Margaret opened the door to find Emma with an armful of groceries and a huge smile on her face. "Morning, Mom." Emma breezed in, kissing Margaret's cheek. "I'm making my famous French toast today. Hope you're hungry." Margaret watched Emma move around the kitchen with easy confidence, humming to herself, completely comfortable in her own skin. This was the Emma she remembered, the bright, funny, confident girl who'd grown into an equally bright, funny, confident woman. "You seem happy," Margaret observed. "I am happy," Emma confirmed, cracking eggs into a bowl. "I've been meaning to tell you, the foundation is officially launching next month. We got the nonprofit status approved, and we already have 3 major donors committed." "Emma, that's amazing." And, Emma continued, her smile widening, "I've been asked to speak at a women's leadership conference about emotional abuse in relationships. They want to hear my story." Margaret felt pride swell in her chest. "Are you ready for that? To tell your story publicly?" "I think so," Emma said. "I've been telling it in the support group for months now. I think it's time to reach a bigger audience. If my story can help even one woman recognize the signs of manipulation and get out before it's too late, it's worth it." They cooked together, falling into an easy rhythm they developed over countless Saturday mornings. As they sat down to eat, Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted slightly. What is it? Margaret asked. Derek's engaged again. Third time in a year. Emma showed Margaret her phone, a social media post announcing Derek's engagement to yet another accomplished young woman. Melissa reached out to her months ago, but I guess she didn't listen. That's sad, Margaret said. It is, Emma agreed. But also, it's not my problem. Not my responsibility. I did what I could, we all did, by sharing information. She made her choice. I hope she'll be okay, but I can't save everyone. Margaret heard the healthy boundaries in Emma's words and felt proud. Emma had learned the difference between compassion and responsibility, between caring and carrying. Speaking of choices, Emma said, her tone shifting to something more mischievous, Linda told me you've been talking to someone. A man someone. Margaret felt her cheeks heat. Linda has a big mouth. So it's true. Mom. Who is he? He's nobody, Margaret protested, but she couldn't help smiling. Just someone I met at a business mixer. We've had coffee a few times. It's nothing serious. But you like him, Emma said, reading her mother's face. You do. You like him. Maybe, Margaret admitted. He's nice. Kind. He treats me like an equal. He listens when I talk. He has his own full life and doesn't need me to complete him. So basically the opposite of Derek. Basically. Margaret laughed. But Emma, I'm not rushing into anything. I'm just open. To possibility. To connection. For the first time in 25 years, I'm open. Emma reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Good. You deserve that. You deserve someone who makes you feel bigger, not smaller. Someone who celebrates you, not criticizes you. So do you, Margaret said gently. When you're ready. There's no rush, but someday, when you meet someone who truly sees you and loves you for exactly who you are, it'll be worth the wait. I know, Emma said. I'm not scared of love anymore. I'm just selective. Intentional. I know what I will and won't accept. And that's a gift, in a way. A painful gift, but a gift nonetheless. They finished breakfast, talking about Emma's work, the foundation, Margaret's business, and the man she'd been having coffee with. They talked about everything and nothing, the way mothers and daughters do when they're not just family but friends. As Emma was leaving, she turned back at the door. Mom? I never properly thanked you. For what? For that night at the engagement party. For standing up and saying what needed to be said, even though you knew it would cause a scene. Even though you knew I'd be angry. Even though you knew it might damage our relationship. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You loved me enough to risk everything. And because you did, I got my life back. I got myself back. Margaret pulled Emma into a fierce hug. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. 1,000 times over. That's what love does, it tells the truth, even when the truth is hard. I know that now, Emma said. And someday, when I have kids of my own, I'll love them the same way. Fiercely. Protectively. Honestly. The way you loved me. After Emma left, Margaret stood at her window watching her daughter walk to her car. Emma moved with confidence now, her head high, her stride purposeful. She was exactly who she was meant to be, strong, successful, compassionate, and free. Margaret thought about that night 1 year ago, standing up at the engagement party and interrupting Derek's speech. She thought about the chaos that had followed, the battles they'd fought, the hard truths they'd faced. Would she do it again? Without question. Because sometimes love means staying silent and letting people make their own mistakes. But sometimes love means speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Even when everyone's staring. Even when you might lose everything. Margaret had spoken up. And yes, there had been consequences. There had been pain and fear and uncertainty. But Emma was free. Emma was thriving. Emma was herself again. And that, Margaret thought, was worth any price. 2 years after the engagement party, Emma stood at the podium in a conference hall filled with 500 women, the final speaker at the National Women's Leadership Summit. Her foundation, Choose Yourself, had grown beyond anything she'd imagined, helping hundreds of women escape emotionally abusive relationships and rebuild their lives. She'd just finished telling her story, all of it, from the fairy tale beginning with Derek to the nightmare it became to the moment her mother stood up and refused to stay silent. "The question I get asked most often," Emma said, her voice carrying to the back of the room, "is whether I'm angry at my mother for embarrassing me at my engagement party. For making a scene. For ruining what should have been a perfect night." She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "And my answer is always the same: my mother didn't ruin my engagement party. She saved my life." Emma's voice grew stronger. "She saw what I couldn't see, or what I was refusing to see. She loved me enough to risk our relationship, her reputation, everything, because she knew I was losing myself. That's real love," Emma continued. "Not the possessive, controlling, diminishing love Derek offered. Not the conditional love that required me to change everything about myself. Real love sees you struggling and refuses to let you drown, even when you're insisting you're fine." She looked out at the audience, seeing women of all ages nodding, some with tears in their eyes. So to anyone out there who has someone in their life trying to tell them a truth they don't want to hear, about a toxic relationship, a dangerous situation, a destructive pattern, I encourage you to listen. To really listen. Because the people who love you aren't trying to control you when they speak up. They're trying to free you. The applause was thunderous. Emma saw women standing, crying, clapping. She saw Margaret in the front row, tears streaming down her face, looking at her daughter with infinite pride and love. After the conference, Emma was surrounded by women wanting to share their stories, to thank her, to ask for advice. She listened to each one, offered what help she could, directed them to resources. One woman hung back, waiting until the crowd thinned. She was young, maybe 24, and Emma saw something familiar in her nervous expression. "Can I help you?" Emma asked gently. "My name is Jenna," the woman said. I'm Derek Sullivan's fiancée. Or I was. I called off the wedding yesterday." Emma felt her heart skip. "You listened to the warnings." "Not at first," Jenna admitted. "I thought everyone was lying, that they were just bitter exes trying to ruin Derek's happiness. But then I started noticing things. The way he'd cut me off when I was talking. How he always had an opinion about what I wore, how I laughed, who my friends should be. How he was slowly isolating me from everyone I loved." "What made you finally leave?" Jenna smiled tremulously. "My mom. She stood up at our engagement party and told Derek he was trying to change me into someone I'm not. And instead of getting defensive, I actually listened. I remembered what you said in the message Melissa sent me months ago. I remembered your story. And I realized I was living the same story. Unless I chose differently." Emma pulled Jenna into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. I know how hard that choice was." "I came to tell you thank you," Jenna said. "For sharing your story. For making me feel less alone. For showing me that I could survive this." "You're going to do more than survive," Emma promised. "You're going to thrive. Just wait." After Jenna left, Margaret came over and wrapped her arm around Emma's shoulders. "That was beautiful. What you said in your speech. All of it. I meant every word," Emma said. "You saved me, Mom. And now, because you did, I get to help save others. That's the gift of what you did. It doesn't just change one life. It ripples out and changes dozens. Hundreds. Maybe thousands." They stood together watching the conference hall empty, both thinking about how much had changed in 2 years. How much they'd both grown and healed. "You know what the best part is?" Emma said finally. "What?" "I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Not because I found another relationship or because I proved the Sullivans wrong or because my career is successful, though all those things are nice. But because I know myself. I like myself. I'm comfortable being just Emma, without anyone else defining what that means. Margaret smiled. That's all I ever wanted for you. I know, Emma said. And now I have it. Because you loved me enough to speak up when staying silent would have been easier. Because you showed me what real love looks like, fierce, protective, honest, and unconditionally supportive of who I actually am. As they walked out of the conference center together, Margaret thought about that moment 2 years ago when she'd stood up at the engagement party. Everyone had been staring. Emma had been mortified. The Sullivans had been furious. And Margaret had been terrified. But she'd spoken up anyway. Because sometimes, love demands courage. Sometimes, love means being willing to be the villain in someone else's story so they can be the hero in their own. Emma was the hero of her own story now. Strong, free, helping others find their own strength and freedom. And Margaret? She was just the mother who'd refused to stay silent. And that, she thought, was exactly who she wanted to be. Emma's journey from almost married to completely free shows that sometimes the people who love us most are the ones willing to tell us truths we don't want to hear. Has anyone ever spoken up for you when you needed it most? Or have you been the one to speak up for someone you love? Share your story in the comments below, and if this story touched you, hit that subscribe button because we'll be bringing you more real, raw, emotional stories about love, courage, and choosing yourself. Remember, you are never too far gone to turn around. You are never so lost that you can't find your way back to yourself. And you are always worthy of love that makes you bigger, not smaller.